Philippine Coast Guard particularly, because before that I have been getting AOMs. Those are the memoranda before the audit report is finally released. So I knew very early, back in 2017, that there were some red flags in PCG, and not just some irregularities. They were fake transactions. They were transactions which were disowned by suppliers.
Wow.
And so I've always wondered why there hasn't been, because the president, when he always likes to threaten to fire officials who are
Right.
corrupt. I've always wondered why there hasn't been such a rhetoric against the PCG, and he's continued to promote officials inside the PCG, the same officials who are involved in the
Anomalous. Yeah.
fake transactions. And then so that actually pushed me to conduct the analysis, because I said, well, how many agencies have fake transactions? And it turned out 5. And the point of conducting it is so to tell the president, if you're really serious about fighting corruption, then this is where you start. You have 5 agencies with fake transactions, and half of all the national government agencies with doubtful transactions. And his pet peeve, travel, it actually exists within his own turf. The RTVM was found to have overpriced their local airfares. So if he's really serious, then he should look at our reports and go from there.
What's been the response to the COA report so far?
Well, the president's response,
Just in general, have the departments, have the agencies that have been spotlighted responded to them? Has the president responded to any of these?
none, but I have a source from the Commission on Audit who pushed me to do a separate audit of LGUs and water districts. He said, you will find out more if you do that. So we're gonna do LGUs next and water district.
Level of the leakage in terms of corruption, has it increased, decreased?
Well, I mean, going to the broader picture of the rule of law, this certainly has an implication when it comes to the economic environment.
Yes.
Because I actually made a piece about the ouster of former Chief Justice Reno, and I actually dug deep into the relation between rule of law and investments, and you can point to a very deep connection. For example, in a survey of different establishments back in 2001, it's
Yeah.
a bit dated, and authored herself by Chief Justice Sereno. The aspect of the judicial system that has the largest impact when it comes to investors is actually the Supreme Court. So, for example, I mean, this is
correct.
even more than provisions of law, the Constitution, the Court of Appeals, legal procedures. They look to the decisions of the Supreme Court the most.
Yeah.
So, any decision of the Supreme Court, whether in terms of corruption or any specific issue, certainly has an impact on the decision calculus of business people, whether to invest here in the country or or in other jurisdictions. So there certainly has an impact. I mean, the more the rule of law is eroded, the more we can see the manifestations when it comes to growth penalty of sorts.
And what's the consensus in terms of the erosion of rule of law in the Philippines?
Well, I haven't looked at the data yet. These studies are quite difficult to to master, actually. But I mean, anecdotally, I mean, it is one of the factors. I mean, investors are always on the lookout. For example, are always comparing the legal systems of different countries whenever they invest. And for example, as I mentioned, the trabajo bill and the uncertainty, the mere fact that it has not been acted upon by Congress itself affects their decisions, and what more uncertainties that are coming from the legal system itself.
Right. Interesting. Leon, you brought up the period of prescription for cyber libel, which actually has an impact on everyone who posts on Facebook, right? I mean, again, for transparency's sake, I'm charged with cyber libel. Ted is my lawyer. It's a very strange place and time. What's the implication of the 12 years, from 1 year to 12 years for everyone else?
Well, that has a big implication on people posting on social media, people going online, because what was supposed to be a 1-year crime, a 1-year prescriptive period, has now become 12. And apparently the working theory is that as long as you keep it up online, then it continues to be cyber libel. But again, because that is a theory that they're floating,
Right.
it needs to be tested against how the courts would think.
Right.
So unfortunately, that would mean that we would need the court to decide on it,
So
and
we have to
maybe wait for the Supreme Court to agree or disagree with it. But as of now, that is a theory. There is no case law that backs it up. So we will just have to see what the courts will say. But it does have a huge impact on posts.
The added risk is the element of a warrantless arrest because
Yeah.
when Justice Secretary Guevara announced the threat of a warrantless arrest against CAPA for securities and regulations goals, we challenged him. Sabi namin, sir, so ano pa yung other crimes na pwedeng warrantless arrest? Can it be graft? Because you can say that graft is continuing. If he's still in office, he's still stealing. Sabi niya, baka hindi. And so we asked, sir, cyber libel. Tapos sabi niya, oo, yan, pwede yan, masubject to warrantless arrest. So that's kind of alarming because if a prosecutor finds that you are committing cyber libel without a warrant of arrest, we can have you arrested.
I think the loophole there, the flaw in that particular theory is that the only way you can arrest someone without a warrant under Section 5A is it must be done in the presence of that person. That
In
is
the presence.
in the presence, and so that's the part. And but the other thing I think they're relying on is the continuing offense, and that I think is the one that's a bit more dangerous, because the continuing crime means that the elements of the crime, as long as they happen across various jurisdictions, various territories, you can be arrested at any time because the crime doesn't stop. That's the part that's a bit more dangerous because of that doctrine of continuing crime. But it is a doctrine. It is judge-made, meaning it is in jurisprudence only, and it is related only to specific offenses. Like, for example, the old subversion offense and then rebellion. So, but it hasn't been defined in relation to, let's say, graft.
Right.
Or any other crime, or maybe cyber libel.
They've done it for Estafa because
Estafa,
the
yes.
owner of WellMed Dialysis
Yes.
in the PhilHealth scandal, they've arrested him without a warrant for Estafa because it's supposedly a continuing crime.
But it hasn't been upheld by the Supreme Court, and that's where I think it becomes crucial.
So this is what we're seeing now is that essentially it's almost like quicksand, right? Up until this period of time, until a Supreme Court decision comes out,
Yeah.
anything is possible. The government, the Department of Justice can float anything and act with impunity on those actions. Yes.
It would appear that way because, in that situation, in the Estafa case, I think many people were surprised because lawyers would know that the Estafa as a felony hasn't been defined as continuing. So that's why, again, it's a theory. Now, they managed to arrest the person. He wasn't able to get a habeas corpus order from the court, and he managed to get himself charged, all on the basis of a subpoena issued by the DOJ in the first place. That's why he was there. So that's the part that's significant, because now you can, if that gets tested in the courts and the courts agree with it, then it becomes a continuing offense.
Okay, I just want to, let's take just a look at the video that we're showing right now.
there
You
you go.
can see President
Yeah, he usually
Duterte
takes a
took
chopper.
off from Malacanang Palace at 4:47 p.m. He was supposed to have been at Congress by 4 p.m. It is now, I believe, did he land already?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah,
Wow, how
looks
quick
like
is
it.
that?
Looks like it.
So the chopper landed, and this is a live feed. President Duterte landing at the House of Representatives. He's roughly an hour late in terms of arrival, but everything has gone as expected in terms of the election of both the Senate President and well, what President Duterte wants, he gets right now, correct? So while we're watching the President enter the House of Representatives, Congress, my question goes back to when you're covering the justice system, right? If precedence no longer works, what's it like with these new interpretations?
Well, I've always tried to stick back or go back to the law. Like, for example, if the DOJ or the DOJ does something, I just go back to the text of the law. And Sir Ted knows this. I always ask him, like, is this legal? What does the text say? And what's good with it is that the law stays the same, whatever the DOJ says.
Does.
So,
But the DOJ can act on its new interpretation with relative impunity until it's challenged to the
Until it
Supreme
is
Court.
challenged, yes, that's right.
So what's a defense for the people who
Well,
are...
then they will have to bring it up to the court. They will have to have it, challenged in the Supreme Court, and hope that the Supreme Court agrees with them.
So this
That
is
is
then
really
we go
the way.
back to whether or not we have a captured
Yeah,
judiciary.
that is really the way it is. Yes.
So covering it, you go back to a law that is being reshaped in front of our eyes. What do you tell students of the law?
Well, exactly the same thing. You can never go wrong with the law as written. Although I do give them the caveat that the law isn't the panacea to everything, right? Just because a law is there, it doesn't solve all our problems. Many times the law itself is a problem. So that's what I tell students.
It's just so interesting to me. President Duterte is walking up the red carpet. He looks okay. He looks just an hour late, and he's coming down. So it's interesting to see him. I want to see him up close. Our most powerful leader in decades, right? So I guess to go back to the interpretation of the law, if these new theories are being tested, what are the limits of the testing?
Well, the first limit, of course, would be the Constitution.
Yes, but if continuous crimes, if this is
It
something...
would still fall within the Constitution. That would still be the standard. The court will really have to test it against what the Constitution says.
Yes.
The second thing would be reason. The law would have any departure would have to meet the test of reasonableness. And part of that would be to define it within parameters set by the court already. There are parameters or tests set by the court already. For example, if it's freedom of expression, you know that you cannot curtail freedom of expression without a clear and present danger, for example. So all of those things. Due process,
Yes.
it's pretty clear what the Constitution says about that. So again, they're pushing the envelope. They're trying to create new ways of doing things that could not be done. And so again, the remedy really is to have the court interpret it. But of course, there's always timing. Timing here is important because again, we also have a court that is in flux in
Yes.
terms of its membership. So at any particular time, especially now until 2022, every year there will be retirements, every year there will be changes. So you will have basically a new court every year, essentially, because of the number of people departing the court. So that by itself is significant because they bring in, every time a new justice gets in, that new justice brings in a new way of thinking,
Yes.
a new way of looking at a particular issue.
Our old system of holding, of accountability, is it still working?
Well, it depends on what you mean by old system. The one
It's your
person.
continuing
No.
interpretation.
The one person though who has not been heard from, has been very, very quiet, is the ombudsman. Officially and personally. He has not been heard from personally, has not given interviews. When he was in the Supreme Court, he was pretty accessible to media,
Yeah.
very accessible. But when he went into the Ombudsman's office, he has been personally quiet. He has also been professionally quiet. I am not sure if Lian is able to get any scoops on what's coming out, but the public hasn't really been told of big ticket prosecutions,
Yes.
being brought before the Sandigan Bayan. And except for the most recent appearance, just to drop the cases against former President Aquino, he has really not been heard from,
Yes.
officially.
Yes.
So that by itself is significant because if you're talking about accountability, the main office of in the Constitution for accountability, public accountability, aside from the COA, is really the Ombudsman.
Interesting. As we're talking right now, President Duterte did enter the hall. He should be meeting now with our new Senate President and our new House of Representatives, our new Speaker of the
Yes.
House. Holy cow. Of course, he's quite late, so let's see how long they'll stay there. We'll keep track of it. Leanne, back to you. I mean, what is the most interesting What's going to be your focus now, given what you just laid out?
I just want to go back to Ombudsman Martires. He really has, there's a Martires policy now at the office of the Ombudsman. It's a media blackout. We're no longer given updates on resolutions and probable cause. He did not release SAL-ens of the president and the vice
That's
president.
really interesting, right? That
And the vice president, he doesn't give any update at all except for when he appeared in court, which was unusual. I mean,
Yes.
you don't see the ombudsman going to Sandigan Bayan to argue for the prosecution. I mean, you don't even see the special prosecutor there, but he went there and he really did put on a show. He delivered a quite compelling speech about how he has the most axe to grind against the president, against the former president, but he's doing the right thing of dropping the charges against him. So it's interesting to watch how he would serve for the 7 years. And he just kicked out the deputy ombudsman who investigated the Duterte well. And even that was kept secret from us until it just inadvertently leaked that he was kicked out. We found out about
Yes,
it
yes.
2 weeks, 3 weeks later.
So again, we're seeing what the president wants getting done, is getting done. In terms of where justice, I guess I'll go back to that last question, which is, what's your focus now, given what we're seeing? What is the most interesting thing that you're looking at?
Just keeping focus on how the Supreme Court decides on big ticket cases. We have the war on drugs, the constitutionality of the war on drugs, who's the member in charge is Justice Carpio. So we're anticipating that it will be decided before he retires in October.
And
so
the South China Sea / West Philippine Sea.
But
also,
that
right?
has
That has
been
been
withdrawn
already
already.
withdrawn.
Yeah. Oh, IBP now.
Yes.
How
IBP
how
That
crazy
is
is
really
that, right? That the Solicitor
Quite.
General. I mean, what's the reaction to that? It's normally not done that you would speak to the witnesses of in a case,
Yeah,
right?
you really shouldn't. If you're a lawyer, you really
It's an
shouldn't.
ethical issue, isn't
Yes,
it?
it is an ethical issue.
Oh, okay. We hear the music, and we are now. It looks like there is an orchestra that is playing at the House of Representatives.
Really a show.
Wow, really interesting. Given everything that we've talked about today, how would you describe our political system?
Well, as I started out during our discussion, it's still, of course, now there is consolidation.
Sorry,
of
is that
power.
Senator Bongo
Yes,
walking with
yeah.
President
Yeah.
Duterte, right?
It's
Again,
interesting that you have here a senator, a newly elected senator, who also promises that he will maintain his role as the aide of the president. How can he do that?
well,
So that's the state of Philippine politics. That
well,
you
that's
have
an interesting photo right there,
Yeah,
right?
you have a senator who is supposed to be serving in the upper house of an independent branch, and he's also the aide of the president.
supposed to be a check and balance
Yes.
against the man he is now serving
So
as an
that's
aide
one
for, right?
aspect of
Conflict
the
of
current
interest.
Philippine politics. Conflict of interest.
He looks okay. He looks not happy. So again, it's shocking that Senator Go is with President Duterte. You would assume there's no protocol,
He
nothing
should
that
be
prevents
sitting
him.
in front.
Traditionally, the Congress will organize a delegation to welcome the president
Yeah.
and
Right.
to escort him into the chamber. That is how it's traditionally done. And I think even last year, that's what
Yes,
they did.
exactly.
So I think it's the first time that there's no delegation that has escorted the president in other than Senator Bongo.
So yeah, maybe he volunteered.
I don't know.
While we're waiting, we have like 2 minutes, Leanne. Since Ted can't really talk because he's one of the people that is named in CIDG's case of sedition, with Vice President Leni Robredo. I mean, what's been the reaction among the press corps once this was announced?
Well, at first we thought it was Larry Gadon who was going to file because he was the one who sent an advisory.
Oh, how
So-
interesting.
So we were just kind of chill about it because it's Larry Gadon. He also filed a complaint against Chief Justice Sereno beforehand.
Right.
And then we were just surprised when we were given the complaint that it was signed by the CIDG. So it's like, now it's a big deal because it's a government filing a complaint against the vice president.
yeah.
And immediately what came to mind was, can Robredo be actually filed with a complaint? And I was talking to Sir Dan kanina, constitutional law professor of UP, sabi niya, immunity naman daw does not extend to the vice president.
That's true.
It's only the president. And that's also what Justice Secretary Guevara said, na she can face the complaint.
Oh, interesting. And you know, when I was looking at the New York Times, in many instances, we who live here, we kind of saw it coming. And then when I looked at the New York Times headline, it just looked ridiculous, right? That anyway, let us listen in. I mean, we're looking at President Duterte. I think we have last 30 seconds left. Ted, are these the actions of a powerful president to run after dissent in this manner?
Well, if we define it traditionally by a person who has consolidated a lot of power, it really doesn't. It runs counterintuitively, unless of course the notion of that power is absolute, meaning the person brooks no dissent.
Right.
So then it becomes understandable.
In which case, we need to go back and talk about that.
Yeah.
Let's listen in at this State of the Nation address.
The part of the House of Representatives, the joint session is called to order. Please rise for the nation's prayer.
Amang makapangyarihan, mapagkalingang Panginoon, may gawa ng langit at lupa.
Pinapupurihan namin ang iyong kadakilaan, inyong pagmamahal sa amin. Luwalhatiin ang iyong pangalan sa pagsanggalang sa amin, nang aming harapin mga hidwaan sa lipunan at mga unos ng kalikasan, hanggang kami ay inyong itinaas sa aming pagkalugmok, binigyan ng bagong karangalan, pamana sa mga henerasyong darating.
Saamo po namin ang iyong kapatawaran sa mga kasalanan at pagkukulang. Inyong awa ay igawad po sa amin kung isinasantabi ang katotohanan at kalagayan ng mga mahihirap at mga naaapi. Pinalala ng aming pagmamalabis o pagwawalang bahala. Kabigo ang magmahal ayon sa iyong katuroan.
Tanggapin aming taos-pusong pasasalamat sa inyong patnubay nang tahakin namin ang landas ng kalayaan mula sa kadena ng kahirapan at pagkakawatak-watak. Pag-isahin po ninyo aming bayan sa gitna ng aming pagkakaiba-iba. Idulot po ninyo ang inaasam na kapayapaan at kasaganahan.
Basbasan ninyo aming pambansang pamunuan, mga kinatawan ng serbisyo sibil, aming hukong sandatahan, tagapagpangalaga at ng kapayapaan, ng ang-alab at sagisag ng pagkamakabayan at mapagsakripisyo ay patuloy na lumukob sa kanila, higit na magsilbi ng may dangal at pagtalima sa inyong kalooban.
Inyong mga pagpapala may kaakibat na pagtugon, maging responsableng tagapangasiwa ng inyong nilikhang sanlibutan. Hubugin aming bayan na maging maunlad, tapat at nagtitiwala sa inyong walang humpay na pagmamahal. Amen.
Please remain standing for the singing of the Philippine National Anthem to be led by Mr. Arman Ferrer.
Sinanganan, alab ng puso, sa dibdib mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, duyan
ka ng magiting sa manlulupig. Di ka pasisiil sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong bughaw. May dilag ang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kislap ng wataw at mo'y tagumpay na nagniningning. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may di magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng walhati pagsinta, buhay ay langit sa piling mo. Aking ligaya na wag may mga api, ang mamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
Your Excellencies, members of the House of Congress, ladies and gentlemen, the President of the Republic of the Philippines, Rodrigo Roa Duterte.
Thank you. Kindly sit down. Kumusta po kayo? Senate President Vicente Soto III and the honorable members of the Senate, House Speaker Alan Peter Cayetano, and the honorable members of the House of Representatives, Vice President Maria Leonor Robredo, magandang hapon po sa iyong ma'am at kung nasaan ka. Former Presidents Fidel V. Ramos, Joseph Ejercito Macapagal Arroyo, His Excellency Kacha and esteemed members of the Diplomatic Corps, Executive Secretary Salvador Medaldia, and the other members of the Cabinet, Chief Justice Lucas Bersamin, and the Supreme Court, my fellow workers in government, mga mahal kong kababayan. Let me begin by extending my hand in gratitude to all who kept faith with me in our most trying times. Numbers speak 1,000 words, tell 100 tales, but the landslide victory of the administration candidates, as well as the latest survey result, shows that my disapproval rating is 3%. I hope that the members of Congress, sana hindi kayo included sa 3%, inspires me with determination to pursue relentlessly what we have started at the start of my administration. Few men imbued with the will and the courage to do what he believes is right and just, and whatever be the opposition in terms of numbers and noise, makes a majority. For it is not the eagle in the fight, but the fight in the eagle that matters. Believe me, I will end my term fighting. It has been 3 years since I took my oath of office, and it pains me to say that we have not learned our lesson. The illegal drug problem persists. Corruption continues and emasculate the courage we need to sustain our moral recovery initiatives. Years ago, we saw the terrible devastation caused by illegal drugs. On May 23, 2017, our law enforcers launched an operation to serve a warrant and to neutralize terrorists. A group of armed men with sophisticated weaponry and aided by local radicalized by extreme dogma and teachings, fought our troops for weeks. During that Marawi siege, tons of shabu worth millions and millions of pesos. Drug money killed 175 and wounded 2,001 of my soldiers and policemen in that 5-month battle. I am aware that we still have a long way to go in our fight against this social menace. Let the reason why I advocate the imposition of the death penalty for crimes related to illegal drugs. Our citizens have begun to do their part in the war against drugs and through the barangay formation of anti-drug councils, and also actually surrendering bricks of cocaine found floating in the sea into our islands. I call this responsibility. However, the drugs will not be crossed unless we continue to eliminate corruption that allows the social monster to survive. I respectfully request Congress to reinstate the death penalty for heinous crimes related to drugs as well as plunder. My countrymen, it is a sad commentary that we cannot distinguish our need from our greed, our principles from our prejudices, the real from the fake, and the truth from a lie. The reason is because that many of us, what matters above all is the self. It is selfishness, it's worse for no purpose other than personal aggrandizement. To borrow the language of F. Chanel, Jose, we have not risen above and beyond the parochial interest. Our warped loyalty to family, friends, and tribal kin continue to exact a heavy toll on our programs designed to uplift the poor and reassure our investors, our foreign investors, local, and the business sector in this country. The recent uncovering of the massive fraud perpetrated against the public health insurance system proves that corruption is pervasive. Huge amount of medical funds were released to cover padded medical claims and imaginary treatment of ghost patients. I am grossly disappointed. The government is conned of millions of pesos which could be used to treat illnesses and possibly save the lives of many. Thus, I ordered the NBI to arrest and cause the prosecution of those liable. I appointed a new PhilHealth president, whom I know is a man of integrity, a military man, a former military officer, and gave him marching orders to prioritize ridding the agency of corruption. By the way, I commend the Bureau of Investigation for its handling of high-profile cases resulting in the arrest and prosecution of criminals. These culprits will have their day of reckoning in court. I hope it happens during the last 3 years of my term. Concerning the unscrupulous persons manning our ports and scalawags in uniform, we have been unyielding in our reforms to weed them out of public service. I have fired or caused the resignation of more than 100 officials and appointees of government without regard to relationship, friendship, and alliance. There is no sacred cow, as the saying goes, in my administration. Institutions that are the stewards of our resources and agents of development have long been a major source of public frustration. Drastic reforms within these agencies have yielded results. Our government-owned and controlled corporations, infamous for high salaries and bonuses, being paid for their executives and employees, have started to shape up. As of July 9, 2019, or 32% is 16 billion from PAGCOR. This is more than the 36 billion collected in 2017. My salute to Andrea Domingo. Magpasugal ka pa ng marami. Bureau of Customs, though corruption-ridden, managed to collect 585 billion pesos in 2018. Imagine how much more could have been collected had the BOC been clean and less corrupt. May I cut and just magsalita lang ako kung anong sa isip ko. I went to the Bureau of Customs 2 weeks ago and found out that there are about 63 of them facing charges, criminal charges, and 61 of them under investigation. I hope that I can have the cooperation of Congress. If we cannot abolish their position, and if I cannot dismiss them for the reason that there is a security of tenure, I will just allow them to have their plantilla positions, but they have to report to Congress every day to help me in the huge paperwork that we have to do every day. All of them will go out from the premises of the customs area. I do not want them back. We in government talk too much, act too little, and too slow. I recall saying that before the congressional hearing when I was mayor of Davao City. I say that again to emphasize how little we have changed since then. We have long on rhetorics, but short of accomplishments. It's just that you, Congress, even the executive department, and maybe me. So I am here to rectify my own error. That is why I implore those who occupy positions of power and authority to let your deeds and accomplishments do the talking. Lead by example. Words ring hollow when not followed by positive and prioritized action. Time and again, I have emphasized that, like my fellow workers in government, trabahante lang po ako ng Pilipino. Last year, I signed the Ease of Doing Business and Efficient Government Service Delivery Act, a significant piece of legislation to improve service delivery and fight corruption still until now. However, much is to be done in ensuring our responsiveness to the people's needs. Based on complaints received by this contact center, Bayan, that's in my office. The LTO, SSS, BIR, LRA, and Pag-ibig are the top 5 agencies that need to drastically improve their service. I reiterate my directive to the government and instrumentalities, including the LGUs and the government corporations. Simplify. Andito ba kayo? Simplify. Just like the others. You can do it electronically. You do not have to go to the office. I've been asking that from you since 3 years ago. Pag hindi pa rin yung nagawa yan ngayon, papatayin ko talaga kayo. Nabubwisit na. Simplify and make your services responsive to client-friendly. Your client is the Filipino, our employer. From where the money in our pockets come from our salaries. Thanks to Major Dia, we have increased the number of lines from hotline 8888 to make it more responsive to the public. Our ultimate goal is for our people to be freed from using these hotlines because government service and response have markedly improved. Again, ang problema kasi ng addressing now to the Filipino. Kayo rin kasi, Sinasabi ko na sa inyo, be assertive. At pag kayo o ikaw hiningian more than the required payment by government at humingi pa sa iyo, I've been telling you, mag-iskandalo kayo sa opisina. Make a scene. Sampalin mo yung na yan. Kasi aabot rin sa akin yan. And I have done that. Ako magprangka ako sa inyo. Ako lang ang presidente na hanggang ngayon nagbubugbog talaga ng tao. Yan sa loob ng Malacanang. Pinapakain ko ng pera yung mga yawa na yan. Galit na ako sa inyo eh. Kindly be assertive. Pagka hiningian ka, sabihin mo, ina mo, sabi ni Duterte, the President told us, that if you extort money from me, I will slap you. At sampalin talaga ninyo. Di na bali magkaaway, I will defend you. At kung maari, and this is what I've been doing all along, there's an 888. Be sure that it is true. Though you are not liable for libel, pero wag naman yang makasakit ka ng kapwa-tao na wala namang kasalanan. 888 then place to President Duterte, abuses by director asking for money. Text mo, lalabas yan dyan. And that is for the public to view. At kung totoo, Malacanang, I said, is open 24 hours. 24 hours, basta corruption. And that is why that fiasco about the frigate ni Trillanes was because yung Koreano na napagbili ng barko who sold the ship to the Philippine government, wala pa hong delivery. And it was there already ready. And that is why that Korean went to Malacanang just to complain, why is it that there is no request for delivery? So I told Bong, ayusin mo yan. He went to Lorenzana, and Lorenzana, nagsulat siya. May nakakuha, because sa Malacanang, every administration may tao yan dyan. Every administration leaves some of the men because they are appointed on plantilla position. Kinuha nila, then it was brought here before the Congress. And so Bong was called to testify and said he was assured it will be a closed door. So I told Bong, no, ask for an open and public hearing. Sabi ko, sabihin mo sa lahat, kanina, wala, you have nothing, just say the truth. Sabi ko, pagkatapos niya testify, sabi ko, Bong, maniwala ka hindi, you will be a senator. Totoo yan. That is the story of how convoluted politics and corruption here in our country works. Equipped with political will, the government ordered the closure of Boracay Island for 6 months to prevent its further deterioration. We cleaned and rehabilitated the island and not allowed it to heal naturally. I am proud to say that it has been restored close to its original pristine state. Boracay Interagency Task Force led by Secretary Simato and fully supported by Secretaries Andio, Romulo Puyat, what's her name? Puro surname ito, Romulo Puyat. What's her name? Berna. Berna, Romulo Puyat, Belo, and Villar, and the TESDA Chief Mamanjong for this huge success. Kudos are also due to the PMS for integrating the 6-month rehabilitation plan and the NEDA for the recently approved Mindanao term Boracay Action Plan. Boracay Island is just the beginning, and the girls there, the foreigners, are waiting for you gentlemen to visit the place. They are all on the beach sunbathing. You are invited. I have not been there. Alam mo, nung naayos yan, we were told that there's going to be an opening tomorrow. So on the TV on that day, magandang hapon, showed a lot of bantings and banners, Salamat, Duterte, ano mapagkatao. So when I saw it, I called the military and the police, remove the bantings. I am not going there. No need to really advertise. I am paid for what I'm doing. Nakukurnihan ako. Too much adulation, bordering pretensions. I can almost smell it a mile away. And I never went there until now. What I did was, I went to the other side of the island and asked the DAR, what is the status of the land behind the beach of Boracay? And they are still categorized as forestal and agriculture. Not, I said, not commercial, no sir. So I told the agrarian reform, go to the place, have it inspected, because I will declare the whole of the island a land reform program. And I gave the islands piece by piece to the Etas, the natives of the place, para walang masabi. Marami kasi ginawa ko raw para linisan ko, ibigay ko sa mga kaibigan ko. Wala akong kaibigang mayaman. Ayaw kong kaibigan ng mayaman. Because pagka mayaman ka, tatabi lang ka lang sa akin, pati ako napahira na ng kung ano-ano ang hingiin mo sa gobyerno. There are those who violate environmental rules. I am giving due notice to the LGUs and other stakeholders, kayo po, of tourist destinations to take extra steps in the enforcement of our laws and the protection of our environment. On January 27, 2019, we officially started the Manila Bay rehabilitation. Though we have a long way to go, we are encouraged by the test results of the waters near Padre Faura. We will relocate informal settlers. I hope it can happen during my time. Along the waterways and shut down establishments that continue to pollute and poison our waters. Make a choice. I'm going to the... Malaki ba yung building dyan? I'm going to dismantle your building or just simply burn it down so that we can have a new setup of environmental friendly, whatever that needs. So the Build program in emerging economic hubs outside Metro Manila, this will swiftly gain ground. Economic team led by Secretary Dominguez, hard at work in the interconnection of our islands and cities by air, land, and sea, are Secretaries Tugade and Villar. Alaman naman ninyo, magaganda na ang airport ninyo. Una ko nga kayo, everybody's complaining about the Davao Airport, and I said, Davao will be the last. Kung hindi na maabutan, sabi ko mga taga-Davao, pasensya, baka nga 3% sila doon sa kabila. We also paved the way for the entry of third telecommunication provider. Do not worry about this. There is no corruption at all. I guarantee you, upon the grave of my father, I do not talk to them. I just say, just do your work. And kung maaari, according to what the specifications are required by this government. I challenge this new employer to fulfill its commitment to provide fast and reliable telecommunication services to our people, especially in the served areas. DICT Secretary Hunasan will be the lead man in this endeavor. I hope he is here. However, developmental gains will not be felt by our people in the countryside if we cannot maintain law and order. Yung peace and security, we need to enforce the law. After almost 2 decades of peace negotiation, the Bangsamoro Organic Law was finally passed and ratified. For decades, our Muslim brothers in the armed have been mired in poverty. My late Muslim brother, Minda Chair Abdul Ghair Alonto, envisioned a progressive, peaceful, and united Mindanao during our lifetime. It is my hope that the Bangsamoro transition will fast-track the establishment of regional government that will secure and comfortable life for Muslim brothers and sisters and all indigenous communities in the Bangsamoro regions. Additionally, I have taken the helm of the National Task Force to end local communist armed conflict and have assigned a cabinet member to each region to harmonize government efforts in attaining national development security. Through the exceptional leadership of Secretary Briones and the DepEd, I am proud to say that this year more Filipino learners are receiving basic education with over 27 million enrollees from kinder to senior high school. And because we have still a little to spare, the fastest population growth, one of the is the Philippines. We are so industrious that we are producing more people than. I do not want to quarrel with the religious, but more than 823. Sorry, but I see not good. For the, nasuot ko lang to pag paminsan-minsan eh. Out of school youth and adult learners were able to access non-formal education through the alternative learning system for our national sports development. I support the proposed measure to create the National Academy for Sports for high school students. Almost 86,000 micro, small, and medium enterprises, or the MSMEs, have received over 3 billion worth of loans since 2017, thanks to the efforts of Secretary Lopez and the DTI. Additional benefits for solo parents, the assignment of health workers in all barangays, and the expansion of the malasakit centers are what we also hope to achieve through the bills filed by the original concept of Bongo para manalo sa kampanya. Yun ang mantra niya. Tutuhanin mo lambong, mapahiya tayong lahat. I also implore Congress, you have to study this very carefully. Congress has to postpone the May 2020 election. And yung barangay Sangguniang Kabataan to October 2022. Because if you read it, to rectify the truncated terms, paiba-iba na eh. The truncated terms of sitting barangays, but also provide them with the ample time to finish the programs and projects. I suggest Congress should also enact the Magna Carta for barangays. This administration's malasakit at Servicio program has of course reached the Filipinos who labor in foreign lands. The milestone signing of the bilateral labor agreement with Kuwait in 2018 is a testament of my commitment to stop abuses inflicted on our overseas Filipinos, to ensure their welfare, protection, and their access to government services. The establishment of the Department of Overseas Filipinos will sufficiently address this particular need. Our accomplishments for the past 3 years and the plans for the next 3 are discussed in detail in my midterm report to the people, copies of which shall be made available before the day ends. Let me repeat what I said many times before. Honestly, I have identified the enemy who dumped us into this quagmire we are in. I have met the enemy face to face, and sadly, the enemy is us. We are our own tormentors, addressing the Filipino people. We are our own demons. We are as rapacious predators preying on the helpless, the weak, and the voiceless. We find corruption everywhere in government, when every malefactor watching his cohorts back in blatant disregard of his oath when he assumed public office. Even the language has evolved to soften the wickedness of the criminal act. For the boys, sponsoring an event, or what else have you? No amount of euphemism can trivialize or normalize betrayal of public trust or any other criminal offense. It is an injury laced with insult. It is both a national embarrassment and a national shame. For every transaction, a commission. For every action, extortion. and a request that goes on and on endlessly and shamelessly. Catharsis is what we individually and collectively need to do today. Not tomorrow, but today. Self-purgation, followed by the resolve to do what is right and proper, is good for the nation's health. Let me ask you, when will corruption end? Kailan ba talaga ito? Hanggang kailan? Well, I don't know. I've been with government for almost 35 years now. I am not singling out myself. It's the entire gamut of our system. Corruption exasperates. It frustrates. It is also exasperating that there are times when I think that perhaps it is blood that we need to cleanse and rinse away, the dirt and the muck that stick to the flesh like leeches. Of course, it is only a thought. I am simply thinking aloud to dispel any controversy that my statements in this regard will create something else. Words of Pedro Guerrero, who said, "Sometimes they write what I say, and they write what I say and not what I mean." So yung mga papurga-purga lang dyan. I use similes, metaphors, hyperbole, and other figures of speech every now and then to prove or stress a point. I am as human as anybody else. On the matter of the Philippine West Philippine Sea, the avoidance of conflict, armed conflict, and protection of our territorial waters and natural resources compel us to perform a delicate balancing act. A shooting war is grief and misery multiplier. War leaves widows and orphans in its wake. I am not ready or inclined to accept the occurrence of more destruction, more widows, and more orphans should war, even on a limited scale, breaks out. More and better results can be reached in the privacy of a conference room than in the squabble in the public. That is why I will do in the peaceful way, mindful of the fact that it is a national pride and territorial integrity that are at stake. Short of expressly advocating a call to arms, there are those who say that we should stand up and stop those who fish in our economic zone. Of course, we will do in due time. There is, alam mo ganito yan eh. When I became president, and when the M16 rifles were canceled by America upon the prodding of the U.S. Congress, I found myself in a quandary because reports were already very ripe na there was the passing of arms in Marawi. And because of the arms were already mostly in the hands of the police, hands me down from the army, were quite old. And sometimes the bolt that pushes the bullet flies out, and the barrel has really become loose, and there are no more lands and planes to push it into a circular trajectory to maintain its accuracy. So I was forced to go to China. About it na lang na masabi ko sa inyo to. Then in China, we had a bilateral. I brought along the military man, Anyo, the chief of staff then, and all of them. Lorenzana, Esperon, National Security. In that meeting, I said, cabinet members were there, I want to go to my territory to dig oil. That's the word, I dig. Because that is ours. Ang sabi ni President Xi, well, you know, there's a conflict there. Do you think rather than go there and have a confrontation, not necessarily the great ships, warships, but, you know, a squabble there could lead to something else. So we just became friends. And perhaps we can talk about this, but not an outright precipitate move, because, you said it softly, it can mean trouble. If the trouble comes out from the mouth of a president of a republic, anong magawa mo? So, what did I answer? Well, then maybe, sir, we can talk about this at some other time. But definitely, before I go, we must talk about the West Philippine Sea. We cannot, you know, have our cake and eat it too in this. You know, I cannot go there even to bring the Coast Guard to drive them away. China also claims the property and he is in possession. Yan ang problema. Sila yung in possession and claiming all the resources there as an owner. We are claiming the same, but we are not in the possession because of that fiasco. Noong dalawang nag-stand off doon, during the time of my predecessor, si Albert Ambassador, if I'm correct, I do not know his real name, tayo ang umatras. Pagsabi na umatras, that was a kind of a compromise. Tayo ang umatras. Nung umatras tayo, pumasok sila. Marami na. That day, we lost the Spratly and the Panganiban. Yan ang totoo. Walang bulahan yan. Ngayon may arbitrary ruling. I said, I could not even ask for the oil, claiming the entire resources of the Muna. Anong sabihin ko sa kanila? Kaya sinabi ko, let us do this mutually. Of course, when she says, I will fish, who can prevent him? And sabi ko naman, we will fish because we claim it. And sabi ko, please allow, because before that, they were driving away our fishermen. Di ba inaabog nila? Kaya sabi ko, do not drive them away because the Filipinos are of the belief that they are also claim it. Now, if you deprive the Filipinos of their, magkagulo talaga yan. And it could lead to one, not really war. I said, we have to, sabi ko, so I said, I allowed. That was on the premise that I own the property. Pero hindi tayo in control of the property. Yan, magsabi sila, of course, I will allow you. Kaya pinabalik. Yung disgrasya, yung pagsabi, a mere incident, legal marine incident. Yan ang ginagamit sa batas. A marine incident happened. Hindi naman sinasabi marine accident. It was just nabanggaan, wala naman. So they wanted to talk. Tapos ayaw dito. And so, sige, we will investigate and you investigate. And when we are ready, we should meet and compare notes. And let us determine who pays for what damage. Ganun lang. Ipadala ko yung Marines ko to drive away the Chinese fishermen. I guarantee you, not one of them will come home alive. Kung ipadala ko yung 5, pati yung frigate ko na bago, yung pinagkaguluhan nila ni Trillanes dyan sa that made Bong a senator, ubos yan. Because there are already guided missiles in that island. And the fastest that they have installed there can reach Manila in 7 minutes. You want war? Alam mo, asaran yan eh. Supladuhan yan. Kung supladuhan lang, mura na, putang ina mo, let's ka, umalis ka diyan. Kung ganunan lang, bright ako dyan. Hanggang bunganga lang. Pero kung bunutan na ng baril, pwede siguro. Basta 2 lang. But the problem is, whether we do it in a diplomatic way, there will be heated arguments. Sigurado yan. We do it in a confrontation doon, we try to drive them away, it could lead to a violence. Anyway yan. By the way, the President answered when I will dig my oil the first time I went to China. Nakita ko yung tao. So you can more or less draw a profile of his. Please do not do that because there will be trouble. Ano man magawa ko? I go there as the fisheries and besides, I was invoking yung traditional fishing rights. It is in that arbitrary ruling. Ayaw lang ninyo gustong tignan. It is mentioned there that even before countries were in existence, people around an ocean or a lake had already been fishing there for generations. And that is why fishing rights are allowed in the so many cases between Finland and Germany, decided by UNCLOS. UNCLOS is the international law of the seas. UNCLOS is a product of a treaty. That treaty is also a part of our land because we are a signatory. Dito kung basahin lang ninyo yan ng husto, and everybody recognizes traditional fishing rights for the natives who were there even before the creation of publics and governments. That law is a human law. So I'm sorry I promised you 40 minutes. God, you want me to start? Oh, we can go home now. I have exceeded there is a time for everything. Do not believe the others because they are not my friends. They are my political enemies. They say, I do not believe in God. Who says? I am a believer of a universal minder. But I do not believe that a God so perfect would create hell for his creation. And what kind of God is he? He is not my God. There's a time for everything. A time to negotiate and a time to quarrel. With your enemy, with your political opponents, with your wife. That is why some lives here are and a time to antagonize, and a time to make peace, and a time to go to war, and a time to live, and a time to die. That's Ecclesiastes 3. Our ownership of the West Philippine Sea is internationally recognized. However, both the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, UNCLOS, and the Arbiter Award in the case of Republic of the Philippines versus People's Republic of China recognize instances where another state may utilize the resources found within the coastal states. Exclusive economic zone, the arbiter ruling even states, the one that they are charging me for violating the Constitution. Sino gani yun? Suntukin lang kita dyan, buti pa. Dito the arbitrary even states that the Philippines may enter into fishing agreements with other states, provided certain conditions and requisites in the UNCLOS are met. So yung aking sabi niya, let's go fish. Sabi ko, you have to act, they've been there fishing since time immemorial. I think it was Adam who got the first lapu-lapu there. Let me assure you that national honor and territorial integrity shall be foremost in our mind. And we may take next steps in the smoldering controversy over the lines of arbiter ruling. The West Philippine Sea is ours. There is no ifs and buts. It is ours. But we have been acting along that legal truth and line. But we have to temper it with the times and the realities that we face today. Poverty incidence fell from 27.6% in the first half of 2015 to 21% in the first half of 2018. The most important number, though, is the 6 million Filipinos we need to pull out from poverty. Kindly help me on this. And as I said, corruption is everywhere. You are free to investigate. I don't take offense. If there is anything wrong in my department, the executive, you are free to open the investigation anytime. You do not have to call me. Call the idiots, expose them, and send them to jail. You are helping. Do not be, I am not, I've been a prosecutor. I know how it works. Feel free. Feel free to expose anything that is not in accordance with law. We have pursued tax reforms to fund our poverty reduction programs. I therefore implore Congress to immediately pass Package 2 of the Comprehensive Tax Reform Program, or the Trabajo Bill, which shall gradually lower the corporate income tax and rationalize and improve fiscal incentives. It will energize our MSMEs and encourage them to expand their business and hopefully generate, I'm missing the word hopefully, para sabihin na you're all talk, hopefully 104 million jobs in the coming years. The MSMEs hold the promise of raising a lot of the Filipinos. I therefore believe that it is now time for Congress to approve a new version with salary standardization law. Ngayon na. And to the teachers, alam mo dito, who toil and work tirelessly to educate our young. Kasali na po dito yung hinihingi ninyo. Hindi naman masyadong malaki, pero it will tide you over during this hard time. A little bit bigger than before. This is intended to increase salaries of national government workers, including teachers and nurses. nurses. I am also asking Congress to pass the remaining packages of my administration's tax reform program and the bills that would further raise excise tax on, very good, let us do it, tobacco and alcohol. Sinong naninigarilyo dito? They should be exterminated from the face of the earth. They are the ones, you know, I do not hide what's wrong with me. I acquired Burgess disease because I smoke. But I made it a national policy because, you know, when I was new mayor, I went around to see the discos and nightclubs. I could hardly see the faces of the people inside. You have to wade into a thick smoke to just recognize one. So that was when I decided. But I was still smoking. But I decided, because I knew, I already had it. It's time. Sabi ko. And in national law, para lahat na, that at 12 o'clock, everything closes. I'm not trying to pull a chair here. Mine was that 2 o'clock noon sa Davao. It was 2, then I reduced it to 1. When that boxing mayor there became mayor, she reduced it to 6. Walang order, no orders in advance. They said, we have ordered already, so you can close, but we have to drink. Itong ngayon, at 12, everything closes down. Nobody works. So, I think that we should adopt it. Most of the states, in many countries, gano'n man. Alas 12, sarado na talaga. We have to stop drinking. And jukebox, they're only good up to 8, 9. 8 maganda. It's there in every corner store. Blares out noise. And the children will go to school and the working class. And you are there with your store. I have prohibited it in Davao. And at 12, as you see, Davao is quiet. Because everybody is resting already. Be it in the memorial parks, cemetery, or in the comfort of their home. The evaluation system has also to be improved. Local government units and rationalize capital income tax. I urge Congress to review and pass the government right-sizing bill to reconfigure the existing Metro Manila-centric bureaucracy, streamline government systems in order to deliver services without delay and within a short timeline. These reforms would be for naught if we cannot avert of a new poor every time a disaster strikes. The Philippine experience has shown that natural disasters are poverty creators. That is why we need to hasten the establishment of the Department of Disaster Resilience so that this department focus on the natural hazards and climate change. I urge Congress to fast-track the passage of the administration of this bill, administration version rather. In 2017, I reminded all of you of the probable consequence of a catastrophic earthquake in Metro Manila and its surrounding provinces. Since then, I have established a project management office for the earthquake resilience and the greater Manila area to implement two-pronged strategy on earthquake resilience and mitigation efforts. I just heard, it's not in my speech, I just heard that from a psychic that the first crack, when the big one hits, will be right here in the center of this. Yan man ang sabi nila. Philippines is so corrupt, it's so lousy, that if you kill all congressmen, senators, and the president, we will have a new day. So I pray that if the earthquake comes, it comes now, this moment. Kompleto na tayo. May madamay pa tayo doon sa harap. We weathered one damaging effect of climate change this year. The El Nino wreaked havoc in the agricultural sector and caused water shortage in the greater Metro Manila area. We need to pass bill creating the Department of Water Resources and Water Regulatory Commission. Alam mo, the agencies and the guys that are handling the entire water work system, you have to change it immediately. You know what? There was this 3-day no water. I was in Davao. So everybody was complaining. And I was even afraid to come here because what if my girlfriend will not be able to take a bath? She will smell like hell. So I said, I'll wait for the water to wash her. Alam mo kung hindi ako nagmura, kung hindi ko sinabi, patay ko, putang ina. And then when I arrived in the morning, there was water. And my girlfriend was fresh. I also call on Congress to pass a law mandating a fire protection modernization program. Diyan tayo nagano. If you go to Davao, you find the best. The best of everything. 911, all the cameras, all the screens. We need that if we can fund it. Alam mo, sabi ni, Sunny is here? Secretary Dominguez? Siya man ang magyayabang. Sabi niya, marami tayong pera. Pero pag tanungin namin siya doon sa cabinet meeting, walang pera, walang pera. Si Jokno, ganun rin. Kaya tapon ko sa Central Bank. Every time sabihin mo, we discuss projects. We plan. And we submit it to Congress. About its final imprimatur. Hindi kami, may pera ba tayo dyan? Wala. Magkano? 4 billion. That is not the property. No money, no money. Saan palang pera natin dito? Sa bulsa ninyo? Karaming koleksyon natin dito. But Sane says that we can fund. This one we have to answer. Now, I would like to remind, pagbigyan na lang ninyo ako para man ito sa lahat. Alas 6 pa nga, ginugutom na kayo. Hindi pala kayo nagmerienda. Alam mo, ever since na-integrate yan, you would notice in your cities and provinces the deterioration of the service itself. Wala nang mga truck, luma na. Would you believe it in Davao City? I'll show it to you. We have a 1934 Studebaker fire truck. Maganda pa. So we have to do better than this because there are other cities which are utterly without the tools to respond to the challenges of fire. We have to come up with something that is really good. I mean, at this age, it would be a shame if you cannot put up a fire in 2 days, 3 days. My God. We have to set aside. Sunny, you have the money? Oh, yes. O, see? Basta sa maraming tao, mahiya man mag-deny. Yeah, totoo yan. Totoo yan. We have the money, so maybe Sunny can give you a figure that we can set aside. Nakakahiya talaga itong ano natin. Ang Davao meron. Davao has a very good 911. Hindi ako nagyayabang. And we have cameras in every corner, so we can solve crimes immediately. And meron kaming 911. What is your emergency? That's the standard. So it's fire, they call the fire department. Sabi ko, 911, yes. What's your emergency? I seem to have lost my girlfriend since. We know you, Mayor. You go back to Manila. There are plenty left there. Go. This will equip the Bureau of Fire Protection with tools to respond to challenges. I further ask Congress to urgently pass the National Land Use Act or NLUA within this year. Pakilang po. So that we can proceed with the new, we can meet the demands of the new investors coming in. Ang lupa natin ang problema eh. A science-based national land use plan would serve as basis for the LGUs in crafting respective development plans and help disperse economic activities to the countryside. The dispersion of economic and business activities to Visayas and Mindanao is not just a campaign promise, it is an economic imperative and a key to our country's sustainable and equitable development. We will encourage investment to develop the rural areas and Metro Manila and other mega urban areas. Let me cut here. Total, maliit na lang. I would just like to remind everybody, no offense intended to the mayors and governors, to the local government. Pero yung style ninyo na it takes about 3 days, 4 days for the employees of a certain company, store, or whatever to go back and forth, back and forth. When they go back, you have in your regulation. He gets it, he secures it, then when he goes back, saying, oh, there's still, you have to follow, you have to get this paper. I will tell you now. Hindi ako nagyayabang. In Davao, it's 1 hour. Unless there is a need for ocular inspection. I am directing you publicly. Mayors, I am directing also the DILJ, Secretary Anyo of the local government, to see to it that this is honored. All clearances, permits emanating from your office that would need also your approval must be out at the very least within 3 days. You do not do that. I am directing si Secretary Anyo. Is he here, sir? Nandito ka? Secretary Anyo, the former Chief of Staff. He's also a military man. I want 3 days, unless there is an exceptional reason. 3 days, para hindi na magpabalik-balik kasi dyan ang pirahan. Pagdating doon, meron namang hingin. Padotong hingin. Kaya said the Filipinos, if it is done to you, I'm telling you, slap the guy, create a scene, create a scandal, because that incident, however little, will reach me. And if that it does, you can be sure, if I do not call you an idiot, I will go there myself. That is a promise, that is a pledge. Make it a part of my oath of office. Lahat kayo dyan, pati ang easement, well, under Villar, okay na. Pero yung easement, $1 billion, $1 billion pesos. well, if it's a foreign company, it's $1 billion thing. Ganon yan, pabalik-balik at hindi binabayaran. That's why nagpatong, if all monies and revenues due government are collected in good faith, marami tayong pera. I'm telling you as president, marami tayong pera para extra money to uplift the mass of Filipinos who are suffering. Baski hospital lang and housing. Jobs, it's the economy that runs it. If the economy is good, more jobs. At the meantime, itong hospitalization, education, the basic things, saka itong relocation. Kaawa talaga. Kung makolekta lang natin, hindi makurap ang pera, marami tayong pera. Kaya ako nagsabi, that's why I will make it public. I was a denying Filipino. I gave it to a group of people. Tapos, nagpabidding sila. Ang nagbidding nila is to allow a gambling casino to be erected there inside the Nayong Filipino. Kaya ako nagsabi, anong kahulugan ng Nayong Filipino kung lagyan mo ng sugalan and without a bidding? You know, nandiyan yung mga general, they are there, chief of staff. Kasi paggaling doon, pumunta ako sa command conference. Pagdating ko sa command conference, may pinasa si Isane, ghost delivery sa AFP Hospital. Galing pa ako doon. When I was facing the military and police, sabi ko, look, I thought I had my back covered by you. If I cannot trust you, you better tell me now. Because if you, the commanders of the Air Force, Army, pati Albayalde and the Navy, I will step down now. I am residing. I'll go back to Davao. You do the explaining to the people why. Ginanon ko talaga. And even of the cabinet meetings, ganon rin. There was this 2-year pabalik-balik na yung back and forth for tables was sitting on their ass paper. So when they were explaining to me the revised plan, and with so many requirements, clearances from NBI, I stood up with the cabinet members, lahat kami. And the cabinet meeting said, stop. That idiotic matrix is not for me. That is intended for the next, maybe the president after the next. Lumabas ako, sabi ko, inyo na yung gobyerno ninyo. Sabi ko, wala ako, I'm tired. I'm tired and I'm talagang gusto ko na rin mag-resign. Because I'm not happy anymore. So, anytime, the military said, if you want to take over Kudita, go ahead. Do not bring your armors, do not bring your weapons here. Call me and we'll have coffee. I do not believe. I think Marcos and Estrada were correct. That they did not allow kasi yung gwardiya dito pareho yan. Lahat sila dadaan yan sa presidential command. All of them will be assigned. Nag-iikot yan sila, a taste of everything. Hanggang Mindanao. Kaya kilala ko yan sila lahat, dumaan ng Mindanao. Sabi ko talaga, inyo na. Ayaw ko na. Sabi ko, sige, sinong gusto? Raise your right hands. I, duly appointed member of the junta, will now make the SONA next month. Bahala kayo dyan. We treat them about it. If you think that you can run the country better than the elected one, go ahead. That's not my... Is the problem of the Filipino people. Tala sa cabinet na ano, kaya abutan ako ng tupak, magbaba dito ako, ngayon bahala na kayo dyan. I'm going home. One estimate pegs economic losses at 3.5 billion a day due to traffic congestion in Metro Manila. So meantime, I reiterate my directive, my request, my pleading to the MMDA and all concerned local officials in Metro Manila and other cities to undertake immediate action to ensure the speedy and smooth flow of vehicular traffic. Reclaim all public roads that are being used for private ends. Marami dyan. And again, I ask Secretary Anyo to see to it that this is enforced. If there is a mayor or a governor or kung ano kang, sino kang demonyo ka, i-suspend mo, Sir Anyo. Give him time, and if he cannot, if he is not up to it, then papahingayin mo na lang. Suspend mo na. Wala talagang magawa. They just keep on pleasing their own constituents just because there is a constituent, a leader. Ganun kayo eh. The only way to do it, anyway, me, I have no problem. Me, I am an inutile official. Me, I cannot run anymore. Me, after 6 years, I might lose my head. Wala na ako. No more challenges in politics. No more mountains to climb. I will just do my duty. And most of my cabinet members are actually military men. You know why? Gusto niyo malaman? Do not be embarrassed. Atin-atin na lang ito. Huwag mo na silang pansinin yung mga ano dyan. Parang nag-meeting-meeting lang tayo dito. Yung parang nagpulong-pulong lang. Do not mind them. Kung tingnan kasi ninyo, mahiya kayo. Kasi ganito yan. My penchant for military men. I want to ingratiate myself to them. What? I was elected by the people, not by the military, not by the police. But why do I have this predisposed to? Kasi utusan sila madali. Kasi pag sinabi mong walang korupsyon. Kaya lang, ang military, just like any organization, pag ang top dyan, general o ang commander-in-chief, kukorrupt yan lahat. Pero kung sabihin mo na matino, they will follow. So Boracay, I sent si Mato. Sabi ko, puntahan mo nga doon. Is John si Mato here? Si Roy? Yeah. Ito si Roy, nakilala ko to sa Mindanao. Hindi ko man niya kilala. Mindanao. Na-mayor kasi ako 23 years. So all of them passed by Mindanao. Kilala ko. Pag inutusan mo, kaagad. And they know that I will not give illegal orders for them to implement. Alam nila, abogado ako. Sabi ko, sundin lang ako ninyo. Kaya I was surprised when I ordered si Mato to go there, to Boracay. Sir Frank. Alam mong ginawa niya? The next day, lumabas siya doon sa Daily Mirror. Naglalakad siya doon sa beach, naka-t-shirt ng blue, at yung mata niya nandoon sa dalawang Caucasian na kadamit sa Mato. Akala ko ba inutusan kita? Yes, ano? O bakit ka nagpalakad-lakad dyan sa beach? Tingnan mo yung nagkabikini na Dalawang puti. Sa napadaan lang ako, sir. Kuya, trabahuin mo yan, ha? And they did it in 6 months' time. Of course, with I like si Mato because he mixes pleasure with work. That is the way how to do it. I give you until the last week of the year, yung sa September na, to do the clean the LGUs. Walang mangyari dito. We shall continue to invest in the countryside through agricultural programs that will increase the productivity and income of small farmers and fisherfolk. We shall ensure the full implementation of the rice tariffication law, including the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund. This will safeguard the livelihood of small farmers through provisions of modern farm equipment and machineries, seeds and credit, and extension services. I also have not forgotten my commitment to uplift the lives of coconut farmers and further develop coconut industry until the through the urgent utilization of the Coconut Levy Fund. That is 100 million. Kaya ako very careful until now, wala akong nakuha. Look, it is really hard to look for an honest man. I must admit it. Baka ako hindi ko rin kaya. I do not have that. Well, itong Coco Fund na ito yung naiwan sa nung kay Marcos na levy fund. This is sacred money. This money was taken out of the pockets of the Filipinos arbitrarily. Wala kang magawa ni Marcelo. Ito na yan. Kaya itong Coco Levy Fund, kung sabihin mo lang, tama ang Supreme Court, hindi mo pwedeng maibigay, sabi mo sino, you can no longer trace the truthful owner of the land. Ang plano ko, kung gusto ninyo, you save the money. You invest the money, mag-abot yan ng mga more than 100 billion. Ilagay na lang ninyo ng trust fund for the government. So, mga 5 billion. Ayun na lang ang gastusin ninyo to reserve the money. Rather than do it parang sprinkle na ibigay mo sa mga tao, you cannot, sabi ng Supreme Court, tama sila, you can no longer trace the genealogy of the owner, the original owner. And sometimes it would fail. I will not act on that until I find the man. Wala pa akong nakuha. I have yet to look for the man. Hanggang ngayon naghahanap ako, wala akong nakita. Kasi malaki ito. And this will, if you assign a corrupt idiot there. Kaya ang gusto ko, o baka nagustuhan rin ninyo, ideposito ko na lang. Let it remain as a remembrance to the people who lost their at that time. Tapos yung 5 billion, yun yung to improve the improvement sa replanting sa coconut. 5 million, that's a big money. Pero kung ibigay mo, light sprinkler, walang mayaya. Yung magtigabigay, kukuha yan. Yung pupunta. That's why itong land bank na ito, pag hindi ito na, you're called land bank. But you are now the #1 commercial bank in the Philippines. What the heck is happening to you? You are supposed to finance agricultural enterprises and endeavors. Bakit wala? Bakit? Why can't you just buy a few wagons or whatever, go to the countryside and ask the people if there are cooperatives, tulungan ninyo to form one. Pag wala, tignan ninyo na maibigay ninyo for replanting of the coconut, to revive the coconut industry. Pahiramin ninyo ng pera plus the money, nung sabi ko, of the coconut levy. That is sacred money. Land bank should go back to land. Why are you mired in so many commercial transactions? Bumalik kayo where you were created for. And that is to help the farmer. Ilang administration na wala. You better decide on that. I will give you until the end of July to give me a plan. Or else, I will ask Congress to reconfigure you whatnot. Wala kayong... I'm asking now, Congress, pag wala sila, if there is no viable plan for that, for the farmer, and it is just all commercial transaction, might as well abolish it and give the money to the congressmen for their development funds. O, mas makatulong ba? Diretso eh. Ayaw ninyo? Ayaw doon nila, Sir Frank. Huwag mo na lang galawin. I once again urge both houses of Congress to pass a more responsive version of the bill establishing the Coconut Farmers Trust Fund to ensure the accelerated utilization of the Cocoa Levy Fund for the well-being and empowerment of the coconut farmer. We recognize the urgent need to ensure the sustainability and availability of resources and the development of alternative ones. In this regard, I trust the Secretary Kusi shall fast-track also the development of renewable energy sources and reduce dependence on the traditional energy sources such as coal. Finally, sustaining our gains entails a national security posture capable of defending the country from external and internal security threats. Defense Secretary Lorenzana, together with the gallant men and women in the armed forces, is at the forefront of this fight. We expect support for the legislative initiatives aimed at strengthening defense-related systems, such as the proposed National Defense Act and the Uniform Personnel Separation Retirement Pension Bill, and the revival of the mandatory ROTC grades 11 and 12. Very important. Alam mo, pag maggira-gira, 10 out of 10 hindi marunong hawak ng baril to defend even his father and mother and brothers and sisters. Itong mga bata ngayon, they're bereft of the patriotism and the love of country. Balik sila dito. I think military training would be good for everybody. Wala, sige lang. Shabu. Maya, namatay. Duterte, extrajudicial killing. Report to the ICC. Okay. If you can provide me with a good comfortable cell, heated during winter time, I want to go, and an air condition during hot weather, and a conjugal visits unlimited, para we can understand each other. We are aware of the fact that there are times in AFP and PNP personnel, while in the performance of their duties, get unjustly sued, providing them with free legal assistance to help and boost their morale. My fellow citizens, to borrow the words of Churchill, akin to, this is mine. We are now entering a period of consequences. The consequences of what we did and did not do, but should have done during my first half of my term. I assume full responsibility for that. As president, I cannot pass it, the blame to anybody. So it's on me. Though we cannot change the past, we will not squander the future. I will push harder in the pursuit of programs that we have started, but always within the parameters of the law. I will not merely coast along or while away my time during the remaining years of my administration. It ain't my style, but I will not stop until I reach the finish line. Then and only then shall I call it a day. Our goal for the next 3 years is clear. A comfortable life for everybody, all Filipinos. We have made significant strides and accomplishments and signal milestones as a nation in the past 3 years. This momentum must continue with greater fervor in the next 3 years and beyond. I dream of glowing days ahead for every Filipino. I dream of a Philippines better than the one I grew up with. This is my pledge and commitment for just 3 years, if I can. If I cannot, I'm sorry. But I shall continue to comply with my constitutional duty to serve and protect the Filipino until the last day of my term. God bless the Filipino. God bless the Philippines. Thank you very much.
All right. We just heard from President Duterte's State of the Nation address. It ran roughly about an hour and a half. He was roughly an hour late in getting to the podium to actually deliver it. We have with us here in Rappler, as in addition to our full team here in the news group, you've got Teddy Te, JC Punong Bayan, and we also, aside from looking at the legal and the economics, we're also looking at the politics through University of Professor Ella. Nice to be back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you all guys all think?
Why don't you go first? Oh, Ella, go.
Well,
Go ahead, Ella.
He started by reminding the people that he has a renewed mandate, but because he mentioned that he thanked people because he said he had the landslide victory in the last elections, and of course the very high trust rating. So in a way, he is rejuvenated, and most of the things that he mentioned were actually the same things that he mentioned during the first 3 years in the SONA, starting with the war on drugs. But then, of course, he added Marawi, and then, of course, the part of the previous SONAs, his so-called fight against corruption and red tape. Of course, he defended the way he deals with China on the West Philippine Sea. What is actually missing is his reaction on the UN Human Rights Council resolution to investigate the Philippines. Although, of course, he mentioned the relentless fight against illegal drugs, but he did not touch on the resolution. He mentioned briefly he's ready to be imprisoned by the ICC. What was also missing was actually any mention of charter change.
Yes.
But what is also telling is that he mentioned his relationship with military and police, as well as the LGUs, and he gave a lot of marching orders to military people who are now in cabinet positions and the LGUs. So, in a way, it still echoes his style as a mayor. From the very beginning, all his SONAs focus on directing everyone to cooperate, comply, and he warned them again of if they do not comply, they will suffer the consequences. And of course, he cannot avoid ad-libbing and saying some misogynistic comments. And of course, he mentioned papatayin ko kayo.
Yes, yeah. A few times,
A
even
few
to
times,
government
a few
officials,
times.
right?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Okay. Let's. I'm going to go to Ted first. Ted, I know that you also. We've been moving forward on this, and you may be leaving us just a little bit earlier. What was your reaction to the speech?
I echo what Ella said. It's notable for what he said as for what he did not say. So no charter change.
Right.
Nothing on the human rights action taken. But the tone is also notable, as well as the use of language. It
Yes.
appears he has employed a speechwriter. The cadence is there.
Yes.
The use of almost literary, almost poetic language, and for the most part, I think he stuck to the speech, except for notable parts where he would digress, which is very typical of him for the past three SONAs, and you could tell when he would go back to the script because it's really out of the topic, but you could tell he made an effort to stay with the script, and so I think that was notable. But also the themes are familiar, same things that were repeated, and. As far as the laws that he wanted passed, Trabajo Bill, Land Use Act, and then Department of Overseas Filipinos, these are things that he's mentioned before,
Yes.
right? And notable as well the reference to the coconut levy funds. I think the most pointed description of how the funds were obtained.
Yes.
And it is a direct reference saying that it should not have been taken in the first place,
Yes.
referring directly to the Marcos administration, though justifying it under martial law, but saying that it should not have been taken in the first place.
Yes.
So I think that was significant because he expressly said it. I think the irony there is, if I remember correctly, he wants a bill passed,
Yes.
but I do remember he vetoed that bill.
vetoed. Yeah.
He
Right,
vetoed that
exactly,
bill. So
exactly.
I found that quite significant. I found that striking.
Yes.
So, and then the tone, I noticed that as well. My soldiers, my policemen,
Yep,
right?
yep.
So, paternalistic, but also to a slightly, in a slightly different way, you might also call it imperial,
Yes.
right? As if he owns the troops, as if he owns the soldiers. But on the other hand, it also does not square with a line that I think appears for the first time in any speech that he has had. Trabahante lang po ako ng Pilipino.
Yes.
Echoing, bringing back shades of kayo ang boss ko.
Yes.
Right? So that's where I think the speechwriter came in. And so it's a strange experience, listening to the prepared speech and listening to his off-the-cuff comments, which I think reflect more what is in his mind
Yes.
rather than what is on the speech
Yes.
as written. He did rail about corruption, making specific mention of PhilHealth, ports, and citing the action that he has taken, kicking out officials, etc., etc. However, he stops there, and then, of course, citing achievements like the Boracay cleanup, and of course, he would have been expected to talk about the war on drugs, which he did.
Yes.
But I think as unlike previous SONAs, he did not spend too much time on the war on drugs.
Yes.
Which was a bit surprising. And then directly mentioning the death penalty for
Yes.
drugs and plunder, which I think caught a lot of people by surprise as far as plunder was concerned, because I think they were expecting drugs, not plunder. And then, and the reference to Senator Bongo. I think it was partly needling, but also partly trying to, I don't know, rehabilitate his image, because he made reference to stories that had come out about Senator Bongo back when he was still special
Yes.
assistant to the president, when he was
defended.
investigated.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
basically defended him from the podium. And so it's a mixed bag, and not too sure what to make of such a SONA in the midterm. The lame duck tone isn't there yet, but towards the end you could notice some parts of it referring to ending his term. You know, it is as if he's anticipating that it's all about to end. Unlike, I think, previous presidents, where the lame duck tone came in only during the last SONA.
The last one.
The last
Right,
SONA,
right,
as if you were
right.
saying goodbye. So that's what I noticed. His voice sounded strong though.
Yes.
So, you know,
Yes.
he sounded his usual self.
Yes.
Tried to restrain himself from cursing several times, notably, quite evidently, did let loose with a few choice words, and yeah, papatayin kita came out. So, and of course, some of the misogynistic language and references. All in all, I think a usual, not an extraordinary SONA for him. I mean, I think they tried to fit it to how he wanted it. Quite clearly, he probably gave ideas on how he wanted the SONA to sound.
Yes.
The speechwriter made an effort to really make it sound like him, and but I think notable for the use of a speechwriter. The language is different, very different from how he would speak, as can be seen during the off-the-cuff remarks. Yeah.
Which is really confusing. Right?
It's a bit
quite
confusing, yes.
schizophrenic
Yes,
in-
it's a bit
in ways.
confusing. Yes.
Fantastic. I'm going to go back to you for some.
Sure.
JC, ikaw, what did you think of this, Sona? So fascinating.
A number of economic policies were mentioned. Well, for example, he started with the war on drugs. You can view that as an economic policy as well, insofar as supply and demand of drugs. But the funny thing is that, I mean, he is rehashing many of the issues. And one of the things we have to remember is that we're 3 years into the drug war, and it's obvious that it's not working.
Yes.
He talked about the widows and the orphans of a prospective war with China, but contrast that with the widows and orphans out of the war on drugs. So that's one thing. There was also mention about build, but it was just a passing mention. I expected more to be said, insofar as the economic managers are touting it to be one of the hallmarks or the major achievements of the administration. But nothing much there.
Right.
He also mentioned the ease of doing business, and to my surprise, the IRR was passed just 5 days ago. So somehow nakahabol siya. There was also mention about Boracay.
Oh my gosh,
Oh, wow.
he is singing. He is singing. Hold on,
Yes,
JC.
sure.
That's really fascinating.
Let's
Let's
all watch.
listen in. President Duterte is serenading us. I think we should listen in.
Ganda pala mag... Ganda pala mag...
And singing, sorry, President Duterte giving a speech. Let's listen in quickly and see if he'll do. I think he's. Let's go back. Yes, yes.
Anyway, so yeah, there was also mention about Boracay, insofar as, they're really proud of what they've achieved.
Yes.
And yet, when you look at the recent photos, there's a recent flooding.
Flooding, right,
It's
right.
really, it doesn't give the image that it has been rehabilitated
Right.
so well.
Right.
What else? He mentioned the Department of OFWs, which we mentioned before, but this seems to be signaling that they're legitimizing labor export policy, just
are,
like before,
yeah.
during the time of President Marcos. He also mentioned a number of populist policies in the form of entitlements, for example, salary standardization for teachers and nurses, but not so much on the added benefits for military men and policemen. There was also mention about the future tax reform measures. I think that's standard fare in any SONA.
Yeah.
Secretary Dominguez really makes it a point to insert that kind of a line promoting the future tax reform measures. But let's see if the Trabajo Bill will push through, because there's a lot of resistance from the business community, and we're not too sure if that will prosper. What else? There was mention as well about the fiscal position of the government in the form of Duterte was teasing Secretary Dominguez about no money.
Yeah.
Well, that's quite telling because, of course, it might be too much to interpret as. You might see that as the government being aware of the fiscal troubles ahead of us.
Yes.
What else?
Sorry, JC, while you're looking, President Duterte is singing Moon River. Okay. A very, very interesting time. So
Just one more thing.
Sure, go.
There was also mention about the rice tarification act.
Right.
And specifically the Rice Competitiveness Enhancement Fund, a 10 billion peso fund meant to offset some of the damage to the farmers.
Yes.
But there's no assurance that that will help them in the long run. We've had past agricultural funds, but if you recall, there's the fertilizer fund scam, which was only used for former President Arroyo's campaign.
Yeah.
So there's really no assurance that that fund will redound to the benefit of the farmers.
Right.
So all in all, it's almost he just had to mention those economic policies, but I expected more, definitely.
Very interesting. He didn't attack anyone.
No.
Because normally the SONAs are where he so that's also aside. So this is aside from the new tone and
Other
then,
than a general reference to people who are in corruption,
right,
but no specific reference.
whom he would kill,
Yes.
and including the people in government, right? And then this, in a strange way, the kind of the speech that's written as a speech made his departures from it so much more blatant
Yes.
and
Yes.
different, right? Like going to the psychic.
Yes, that's right. That's
The
right.
psychic told him, we were here thinking, I was thinking, oh my God, he's going to tell us something top secret. And the psychic said, but he was using that as a way to convince Congress to pass the disaster legislation.
That's right. Right.
Our senior news editor, Gigi Go, pointed out that the bills that he talked about are all the bills filed by Senator Bongo.
Bongo.
Yes, the malasakit.
Yes, that's
Yes,
right.
right? Through all of it.
Right.
And what do you make of the role Bongo will play in this new administration?
Well, he doesn't occupy a specific role in the Senate organization, but I think everyone knows where the power really is. I mean, I think it is telling that during the Senate hearing, when he was invited to speak on the frigate controversy, which the president identified, right?
Identified.
The
and-
cabinet was there,
Yeah, exactly.
including the executive secretary.
Right.
The entire cabinet was there, which I think, if I remember correctly, led Senator Escudero to ask who's at home, who's with the president,
Right.
because everyone knows how he really sticks with the president. So I'm not too sure if he will occupy a formal role, but just by that speech alone, pointing out all the things, all the advocacies of Bongo, then I think he's demonstrated that's who he will listen to.
Ted, I know we're going to have to say goodbye to you soon, but let me ask you just two questions,
Sure.
and then we'll open it up. The restoration of the death penalty, which we were all surprised about. Plunder, your reaction to that, and then just two more things: the mandatory ROTC, grades 11 and 12. Your
Yeah.
reaction?
For the death penalty, well, that's not surprising because they've really been saying that they wanted to do that.
Yeah.
What makes it, I think, just a bit more disturbing is clearly because it will probably pass now.
Yeah.
Higher possibility that it will pass simply because of the supermajority in the Senate this time, and the fact that they're limiting it to only two, drugs and plunder,
Yeah.
doesn't really make it any better because the Constitution does provide a very clear standard, compelling reasons involving heinous crime. So the burden really would be to show that there are compelling reasons for the death penalty for drugs. And so that would mean, as interpreted by the court, that the burden is on Congress to show that, and that would mean, for example, showing that no other remedies have worked.
Right.
No other remedies have worked. And so if you were to take a look at the context now, there's a war on drugs.
Yep.
People have been killed because of that. Yet they're saying it hasn't stopped it.
Yes.
So why will the death penalty stop the war on drugs? And then for plunder, well, again, the same thing, right? Even when there was a death penalty, there were plunder cases that were committed.
Yeah.
So the same thing. So the bill will probably pass, but I think the justifications would have to be very, very clear because I am certain that there will be challenges to the law as passed. For mandatory ROTC, the logic there of equating mandatory ROTC for grades 11 and 12 in relation to patriotism, love of country, and preparedness for war.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, these are very strange reasons. I was among those who had to go through mandatory ROTC in UP. I had no choice. I had to pass through it.
Yes.
Well, to be fair, I did enjoy my time there. I made a lot of friends, but that was basically it. But it didn't prepare me any better to fight a war.
Yes.
That's what if you want to do that, you join the military, not do it in ROTC.
Right.
So I'm not too sure how they would be able to justify that using just those grounds because, well, there is of course some element of restriction of freedom there because you're basically compelling them to do something that they may not want to do. The second thing is that because these are grades 11 and 12, these are minors.
Yeah.
These are minors. So they're it's unlike college when you enter college. It previously CMT was in college, first year and second year, right? So this time these are minors, grades 11 and 12. So I think that those are reasons that they would have to overcome. I think they would have to get better reasons, I think, if they want to pass it without a challenge being raised against it. Because I'm pretty sure people will challenge it again.
Fantastic. Your last thoughts before I know you have to leave us a little bit later.
Well, I've listened to a lot of SONAs from a lot of presidents. So, again, nothing surprising with previous presidents, Estrada, Arroyo, Aquino,
Right.
Ramos even, and then
Right.
and then of course now Duterte. It's not, you don't expect a lot of surprises. You know what the SONA is for.
Right.
You know who they're talking to. They're not really, it's really not intended as a forum where you can get open discussion. The president would usually list priorities, give marching orders, as he did here. No? So I think, but my take on it is really the different tone. That's one, and two, the thing that people most expected him to say, he didn't say, which was charter change.
Right.
And I think
Right.
that was the glaring omission. People were waiting for
Very
that.
interesting.
Considering all the efforts at establishing a supermajority, absolute control over both houses, and you were expecting that. That never came. That never came.
Very interesting. Fantastic. Ted, thank you for joining
Thank
us.
you. Thank you for this
That was
opportunity.
Ted Dite.
Yeah.
He is a University of the Philippines professor in constitutional law. He is also our lawyer in the cyber libel case, as well as one of the ones CIDG included. I must say all of this for transparency's sake. Thank you.
And there's a hearing tomorrow.
And we have a hearing tomorrow. Yes. Thank you, Ted.
You're welcome.
Let's go back, Ella. I'm really curious to hear what you think of you know, you mentioned when the string orchestra started
Yeah.
playing, you know, this political theater. I
Yes.
mean, what stands out? Why does this work?
Well, it works because the president himself loves dramatic words, and he has an audience. He plays up to the audience.
Right.
People clap.
Yeah, they did.
People clap.
They did.
And-
even at uncomfortable times,
Yes.
like the one of Who Here Smokes?
Yeah.
Patayin ko kayong
Patayin ko kayo.
lahat.
In
Diba?
a way, I think because he thinks that he achieved a victory from the May elections and he has high ratings, so it's also time to put a little more drama, music, and now he's singing, he's really performing.
He really is, yeah. I mean, even the podium itself, right? I mean, it's great to have our native cloths, but
Yes.
quite distracting actually.
Yeah.
And in a strange way, it's so strange to look at the hall.
Yeah.
This is supposed to be a formal process of
Yeah.
reporting to the people. What did you think of the tone, the process?
Yes, by the end of it, he mentioned something about securing a comfortable life for all Filipinos.
Yes.
And that's a line actually that is coming from the NEDA's Ambition 2040 visioning.
Right.
So insofar as we're already past the midterm of President Duterte,
Yeah.
you can expect that we might expect that this is actually an opportunity for him to lay down a vision for the country in the
Right.
next 3 years
Right.
and even beyond.
Right.
But it seems that he fell short of achieving that
Yes.
goal.
Yeah.
In fact, I couldn't help but notice that he still adopts that mayor mentality.
Yes.
Very
Yeah.
For
much.
example,
Yeah.
for example, when
Photos.
he mentions, for example, the jukebox policy,
Yes.
I mean things that are happening in Davao. He's very proud of things
Yes.
that are happening in Davao.
Yes.
And that strikes me. Well, we all know from previous SONAs that he has that tendency to
Yes.
focus on Davao. But when it comes to national policies, I mean, it doesn't give much confidence that he knows he has a grasp of the issues for the country as a whole.
Yes.
So there, I mean, that mentality, I mean, I'm not comfortable with
Still
that at
there,
all.
yeah.
And also the values that are implicit
Yeah.
in his when he really speaks, right?
Yes.
The military, he appoints a lot of military because they follow.
Yes.
Parang utusan was
Yes,
the word,
yeah.
right? That I was
Yeah.
like, and yet in the hall they clap at
Yes.
certain things. I guess well, all right. Well, please, I will come back to you with
Yeah.
that. Let us
Yeah.
go see what happened on social media.
Yeah.
Joining us now is our head of social media, Paige Oxenyola. Paige, what happened?
So for social media, again, this is his third SONA, so people kind of know the script by now.
Right.
They know the
Right.
SOP, and then
Okay.
we've also kind of predicted the sort of stuff that people will say. So as usual, there's a drinking game that happens every year, and now
JC
yeah.
actually did that, you know, and I was slow on the uptake. I was like, we should do
Were
a
you
drinking
drinking your
game.
water every single time?
Yes.
So there's like a bingo where you take a drink every time he says something about drugs, something about wanting to resign. Anytime he says something sexist, did not disappoint this year, happened again.
A few times, but
Yes.
you know, despite the law and
Right, and
the
then
girlfriend
cursing.
and the water and
The
with
Boracay women.
the Boracay
Yeah.
women. And, sorry, continue, Paige.
So,
I'm just
So I think by now people already have like a vague idea of what's going to happen, and then a lot of the sentiment were also like, well, it's the same thing all over again. There was a bonus round supposedly about Iceland and the UN, but that did not happen. So no one got their bonus round this year. As usual, Filipinos use humor to try
Yes.
to get through really confusing times like this. So they were pointing out a lot of the contradictions that the president was saying. What really resonated with them was when the president said something about how we are our own enemy.
Yes.
And he said, we are our own tormentors and our own demons. And then when he said something about how corruption disgusts him, and then they said, you should just look at the audience in Congress. So you have according to Twitter, they were like, you had GMA there, you have Arab.
Yeah.
So they were poking fun at it. They were saying like, maybe that's what he meant when we are our own demons. They were also pointing out how he said something about how Filipinos should be assertive but we weren't able to do the same for the West Philippine Sea. And then in the same breath, he would say something like, it's ours, but we don't have control over the property.
Yeah.
So
That was a bizarre
Yeah.
moment,
Yeah.
right? And he kind of stumbled through it, trying to read
Yeah.
the script
Yeah.
as well as ad lib his own words,
Yeah.
and we were torn a little bit. What do you make of that? Well, tell us what they made on social media, and then I
Yeah.
want to ask you
Yeah.
what you.
well,
what
for
you
them,
thought
it's
about it.
funny, but at the same time, it's expected.
Expected.
Yeah, because he does that all the time. He would say something and then in the next 2 minutes say something completely different or contradictory to what he just said before. So again, it's like it's like being a gaslit housewife. Like you kind of expect it. You question your own sanity. Did you hear the
Yeah.
same thing? Was I listening to the same speech? So they already expect it to not be consistent. So the one thing that's consistent about him is that he's not consistent.
Consistent. Yeah.
And I think they've taken they're used to it, and they're
Any
onto it.
difference in the reactions from the Duterte supporters and the Duterte critics?
So I was looking mostly at Twitter, and Twitter is where the more progressive people are. Although
Yes.
there are some people who also said that this is the best sauna ever.
Really?
Again, I don't know if we're
Right.
looking at the same thing.
Right.
So we might be living in two different
Yes.
Philippines. Yeah, multiverses. At the
Which
same time.
actually I think is part of what Facebook has done, right?
Yeah.
They've really tried to create the echo
Different
chamber.
realities
right?
for
there-
different people.
And yeah, there really are. So the supporters seem like this is the best
Yeah,
speech
they're
that
like,
we've ever.
This is great, and they were saying something like, "He's right. Like we can't go to war with China. We don't have the military capacity.
No one questions
Yeah,
that's not the only choice.
No one brings that up because he also it's saying the same things he's been saying over and over again.
Right.
So they also memorized that script, I guess. And then one thing that people were concerned about was when he mentioned about killing government employees.
Right.
And then people were wondering, why are people in Congress clapping? Like, what's so funny about that? And then the usual sexist comments, Filipinas in Boracay and his fresh girlfriend.
Right.
There was also sexism before the SONA. I don't know if you guys saw that about Risa Hontiveros. Someone on
Yes.
Twitter slut-shamed her.
Yes. Yes.
And then she clapped back because, again, she's the author of the Bawal Bastos.
Right.
So, something about policing her outfit.
Right.
I won't say it on air.
Yes,
But-
yes. You can tweet it
I'll tweet it
afterwards.
later.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I saw it cross and then she came back. Yeah.
So, and then I guess trending hashtags.
Yes.
Apart from SONA 2019, you have hashtag Wakas SONA, which is used by the groups on the ground in the streets today, along with hashtag Sasama Kami. So this is for the protests mostly. And the most retweeted tweet so far, because we are looking at our numbers, and that will be included in our story later, is a photo of a woman at the protest with a seashell headdress, and then it had a tongue twister on it, which reads, and I'm going to try my best, "She sells seashells stolen from our seashore." First try. I know, it was so funny. I'll tweet it out later. So yeah, humor as usual.
Fantastic. Okay. And your takeaway from this, what?
My takeaway from this, I think the difference is before, anytime he would come up with something, say something crazy, we would be shocked.
Yes.
But now people expect it. So when he says like, "I'm tired, I want to resign," people are like,
Right.
"What else is new?"
Right. Right.
So I'm kind of looking forward to next year. Because when you stop being, there's two things. You could either get used to hearing crazy things from your president,
Yes.
and that could be a bad thing because that means your capacity to be shocked by things that you should be shocked by
Right.
are out the window.
Right.
Or you could, on the other hand, you could really be wearing people out, that even
Yes.
your supporters are tired of the same script over and over again. And then when he no longer has something new, will he still have the same support, or will they get tired of him too? Like, will the honeymoon period finally be over?
That's interesting. Great. That's perfect, Paige. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks,
Maria.
Paige, on social media. Let me take that to both of you. That's actually a really interesting question, right? 3 years in, this is normally when he's certainly not a lame duck president because he's consolidated power. And the reaction's interesting. It is expected, but it isn't expected, right? There's something new. how did you react to it?
Well, maybe now he's presenting, for instance, the West Philippine Sea issue as an either or. He's saying that he is trying to talk peacefully, resolve the issue peacefully with China, because it's a very realist, defeatist stance in a way, because he said, because China is there controlling something that is ours, so I try to do it diplomatically. Otherwise, the option is war. In a previous SONA, right after we hosted the ASEAN summit,
Yes.
he even discussed the prospect of the drafting. There's already a draft of the code of conduct on
Right.
the South, and he forgot about that
Right.
here. So
Exactly.
it's like an either or scenario, raising the specter of war and about the widows and orphans as a result of the war with China. Which is very strange to bring that up when in fact these are the images that we have with the EJK, the orphans and the widows. But
So
at the same time, he
interesting. Yeah.
tries to make up by saying that he will continue to fight for national sovereignty and national pride, and eventually,
Yes.
but we don't know when is that eventually he will fight and assert our rights. So he, in a way, he tries to make up at the end, but in a way, it's a defeatist attitude in that sense. It's more defeatist now than in previous SONAs.
Especially since he shifted slightly to actually try to looking at the speech and the way it was written
Yeah.
and the way he would shift from one to the other. It was almost Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah.
It was interesting to see how he would go from one to the
Yes.
other. You know, your reaction to the tone. Ted called it the tone, right? But it was really interesting, you know, because this is a man who obviously has some explaining to do, and he wants to lead us.
Yeah.
He feels
Yeah.
the moral high ground to do that because of his popularity, and yet at the same time, even on the South China Sea, West Philippine Sea issue, he struggled
Yes.
both in the speech, the written speech itself, and in his
His
impromptu
impromptu.
ad libs, right? What did you make of it,
Yes.
JC?
I noticed that there weren't so much attacks this time around.
Yes.
And-
Right. Nothing.
and I-
Normally, he uses the SONA to do a cautionary
Yes,
tale, right?
yes.
To pinpoint whether it's a
Critics.
businessman, Lila de Lima,
Yes.
Rappler was 2 years ago, Inquirer was the first year, right?
And ABS-CBN.
ABS-CBN, right?
But
Media.
I think that is a clue that that somehow signifies that opposition right now is really the space for opposition has really shrunk to the point that there's no more use in railing against critics. There's no one to criticize.
He
already.
mentioned the church.
Oh well,
for a while,
yeah.
But he
for
didn't
a
really
while.
attack either,
Yeah.
no?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
And that's quite disturbing because it gives you a sense of the scale of the opposition right now. It's really diminished over the past 3 years.
Which is actually true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, one more thing is that he cannot now blame the opposition or the critics for the failings of the government.
Yeah.
Now, he
Interesting.
enjoys such a huge supermajority in
Yes.
Congress. And practically, he can really push them one way or another in terms of the bills that he wants passed. But the funny thing is that
But he blamed the Aquino administration
Well, yeah.
for the West Philippine Sea.
There's still that, yes.
Yes. So anyway, sorry, you said the funny thing
yes,
is.
but the funny thing is that he mentioned a number of initiatives or bills that we've been hearing for a number of SONAs
Yeah.
already.
Yes.
So, I mean, he has that control over Congress. But
Yeah.
why is it that we keep on hearing these laws that
Yeah.
on his laundry list, so to speak?
Yes.
For example, you have the National Land Use Act,
Yeah.
Right.
you have the tax reform measures,
Right.
and even the national budget, which failed to pass on
Yeah.
time
Yes.
earlier this year.
Yes.
So, I mean, in the next 3 years, he really has no excuse not to
Yes.
pass whatever he wants
Yeah.
passed because of the support and the control that he has over
Right.
Congress.
And this does not seem like a one-year agenda, right?
Yes.
What do you make of this? What does this mean for the next 3 years?
Yeah, he's actually saying that what he started in 2016 will be continued up to the last day of his term in 2022. But it's also interesting that some of the things that he promised in 2016 were absent. For instance, he did not say when he will sign the ENDO.
Yes.
At the same time, the FOI. He did not mention that anymore.
Yes.
So that was missing. That was supposed to be one of his because he has an EO. So he in previous SONAs he keep repeating that there should be Freedom of Information Act. So maybe that's no longer a priority.
How interesting. I need to ask, of course, I need to ask Pia Ranada because we spoke with her earlier. Pia, tell me you have a mic. Tell me, so, Pia Ranada, of course, was our Malacanang reporter who was banned by President Duterte along with me in February of 2018, continues to cover the president. What did you make of it?
I thought that it was maybe like an in-between speech because last year's was still the most behaved in terms of it was the shortest, it had 0 curse words. He stuck to the script most of the time. This
Yes.
one was like kind of a mix of the second in that it was longer, like an hour and 33 minutes,
yeah.
and it had 7 expletives. And he would go off script a lot, like into the 12th minute of his speech. That's when he started to go off script, and that was when he was saying Filipinos have to make a scene when they demand services from the government. So, but it was still more behaved because, like the others have said already, there wasn't any slamming of critics as much, and he notably even censored himself when he was about to say put PI.
Yes,
He
yes.
only said the ina part. So he was conscious of the fact that maybe he had to trim down his curse words, and he also stopped himself from talking about the church. Like he was saying, I don't want to offend the church. So we were all like, okay, he's going to offend the church. And then he changed topic. So that was surprising.
The agenda that was set, what did you think of it?
The death penalty, call for death penalty was one of the first things. Actually, the first legislative measure he called for. So you can tell that the drug war is still top of mind for him. And you can also tell by the tone of his speech that he is trying to make up for lost time.
Yeah.
And that, he's really saying, I only have 3 more years left. There was also a more reflective tone to it, a more serious tone, a more sober tone. So I think it just marks a turning point that maybe now he's trying to say we have to get moving. Like we can't afford to waste any more time.
The gap, I started at one point referring to it as schizophrenia, of going from the prepared speech to when he goes off. That's a very large gap, right, in terms of the way he thinks, the reason versus emotion, being serious versus poking fun or a punch, kind of. Even how he called this sticks in my head, the military men in his cabinet because madali silang utusan. What did you make of all of these? Is it just I haven't been listening to President Duterte enough? I found them interesting.
Yeah, actually, those were not surprising for me because
You
those
watch
kinds
him all
of
the
lack
time.
of transitions are very, very common. And they were actually the most surprising and most humorous in his second SONA because nothing beats his 2017 SONA in terms of length, how much he railed and ranted, how much
The
he
only thing
went
I remember there
off
was attacking
script.
Rappler, but that's okay. Continue.
So, I mean, for me, he hasn't surpassed that. So maybe he's learned his lesson from that.
But he stumbled a lot more this time around in the defense of the West Philippine Sea / South China Sea. You saw him stumble for words, right? That to me was like the first, I thought, no?
Because he was spewing out certain arguments that he never mentioned before. So I think what happened was he was briefed about it by certain advisors. Then he was said, "Oh, you can say this," but it's not really his argument. So he was just kind of like the part about when he was saying in the UNCLOS, like the governments can the allowable catch policy where they can tell other states that you can fish. I don't think that he really thought of that before when he said we will allow China to fish. It's just that somebody fed him that you can say this. So maybe he didn't really memorize or didn't really get the point. But basically, he just repeated his other arguments about China. We were expecting maybe a better argument this time,
Yes.
but I just heard the same: war is the only option.
Right.
The Scarborough standoff.
Scarborough standoff was really interesting also. The fact that plunder also gets the death penalty, is that new?
No, he's that's
He's
been
always said.
yeah, but there was more emphasis on the drug-related crimes before.
Interesting. Okay, your last thoughts before I bring this back.
I think that this just shows maybe the president, like the fact that he didn't really slam so many people, and the fact that he mentioned his high ratings. I think he's just showing that I've won, basically. Like, I'm at the top of my game, and I'm not worried so much anymore. And then he was saying how he's inutil, like,
Yeah,
obviously
yeah,
he's
yeah.
not.
Yeah.
But he was also saying he's tired,
Yes.
and he wants to resign. He's not happy anymore, and there's nothing more for him to aspire for. He's like, so he's saying, I'm done. Like, I've reached the pinnacle of my career. So, don't. I can rest. I can kind of cruise by and, just make sure that the last remaining years of my presidency are going to be effective. So I think he wants to exude that mindset. So we'll see if, that kind of complacency means he won't be as vindictive to his critics. Just because they don't exist anymore. Like, it's
Right.
like, I've won.
Right.
I mean,
right.
what need do I have to be vindictive when they've all been silenced?
Fantastic. Pia Renada, thank you. I need to go back to JC
Hi, Maria.
because high up, he did something. He did a sleight of hand that I was like, oh my God.
And we forgot that he promised it. He did say that he was going to use his SONA to justify that supposed fishing deal that he had with, Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Right.
So we should have, yes, and he did follow through on that. He did say he was going to do that. Like Pia said and like Professor Atienza said, we're hearing much of the same line, but this time he had everyone's attention.
Yes.
So he was almost bellowing from the rostrum. He went off script at some point when he said, "Ganito yan eh."
Yes.
It's like, I am encumbered by these words that are on my script. Let me say it like it is. And he, interestingly enough, the starting point for him was when the U.S. Pulled out of an arms purchase deal, which of course again brings the issue back to his war on drugs.
Right.
So, and then I just noticed that he did not mention the Mutual Defense Treaty.
Yes.
The American ambassador was in the room.
Right.
And all of this talk of war, the first thing on most experts' minds when you bring up the issue of war with China is, well, you have a Mutual Defense Treaty. A war with you, as the U.S. affirmed,
Right.
will be a war against the U.S. and that is not within China's
Correct.
best interests.
Right.
So there.
None, right? No balance of power, no greater vision for. But there's one other security issue that was right up top, which is
Yes.
May 27, 2017.
Marawi.
He distilled a 5-month-long siege with ISIS-led, ISIS-influenced Filipino forces, which intelligence reports had long stated 2 years before that this was going to happen, but he distilled it to a war on drugs.
Yes.
What did you make of that?
While it is true that when we listen to people who have knowledge about how terrorist cells organize themselves and how they get funding, there has got to be drugs in the mix. We remember that during the Marawi siege, the military, I think twice, presented to the media a stash of drugs and cash and weapons that were supposedly found within the most affected area, the central war zone of the city. However, and please, Professor Atienza, tell me if I'm wrong, it might be a little oversimplistic to just let it all boil down to drugs.
Yes, yeah.
Because as experts say, drugs is it's a health issue.
Yes.
And the proliferation of drugs is a symptom of something else.
Yes.
And when there is drugs and terrorism in the mix, then it might not be helpful to just lump it all into
Yes, yeah.
it's a drugs issue, and that if we weed out drugs, there will not be terrorism.
Yes, yeah.
We weed out drugs. I wonder if that is the best way to approach it, and he leaves it at that.
Yeah.
I guess what most residents of Marawi would want to hear is whether there are plans, if there is a
Yeah,
push
that's true.
for the recovery, the rehabilitation, what's going to happen next. It has been, as he said, it's been since 2017, 2 years,
Yeah.
more than 2 years.
Yeah.
So there, I don't know if there's anything to
I
say.
was also looking for the rehabilitation of Marawi being mentioned.
Right,
Because
right.
he mentioned about peace. He mentioned
Right.
briefly the new Bangsamoro
Yes.
autonomous region. But at the same time, he failed to focus on the people.
Right.
In the
Right.
same way that when he discussed the West Philippine Sea, he did not discuss the fishermen.
Yes.
So the human faces are missing both in the case of terrorism and Marawi, and at the same time also in the case of the West Philippine Sea.
So I just want to see if we can go to this. The reason why, so I used to follow terrorism very, very closely, and in June of 2016, June 21, 2016, take a look at this, right? So this is a story that we did in January of 2017, but these three men, one is from Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, and this guy, a Filipino, his name is Mohammed Reza Kiram, a red flag from Interpol, right? He was a member of ISIS. He was telling people to come to the Philippines. They beheaded these three men here. I mean, what I found strange is that terrorism was distilled to drugs. You know, that's very convenient, but the terror threat remains, and part of the reason that the Philippines remains a vulnerability for Southeast Asia is perhaps because of this, right? Is it convenience? Is it what happens to, this is global. It's not
Yes.
just the Philippines.
Especially now that there's expert intelligence, expert advice telling us that, hey, you're the next focus.
Correct.
ISIS is looking at the Dawla here to carve out their, they didn't succeed in the Middle East. And also, he did not mention the suicide bomber.
Right.
And when we would have wanted to hear, he's a president who likes to say what people would want to hear. And he's big on law and order, ergo the war on drugs. And sadly, it seems as if everything now becomes about the war on drugs. But how about your clear and present threat of terrorism, of which we have seen a recent escalation of tactics?
Interesting. So interesting.
yeah.
Yeah. So let me ask you about the through line, the backbone for President Duterte, for our government's policy in the next year to 3 years. What do you see as the through line of President Duterte's narrative, given everything we've seen?
Yes, I think it's safe to say right now that there's a crisis when it comes to evidence-based policy making. And you see this in a lot of examples. For instance, the Boracay rehabilitation.
Yes.
He took
That's so
some time to
interesting.
explain that.
Yeah.
But if you look at the timeline of their Boracay rehab, you will see that the implementation started even before the feasibility study was completed by the NEDA. So I
Right.
mean, the policy comes first before the studies, which are supposed to inform all of these policies.
Which goes to governing by podium,
Exactly.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Exactly.
interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
And
And I think he, of course, he focused so much on the bills that were passed, but he did not talk about the problems of implementation and the problems of raising funds for many of these laws that have been passed. The Universal Healthcare Law, the 4Ps, making 4Ps a law instead of
Yes.
a program. Of course, he keeps saying the taxes and the revenues collected are higher this year, but how do you sustain these things?
Right.
He talked about the need to develop agriculture, but there are no clear instructions on how do you really develop agriculture. He mentioned the passing, he keeps saying every SONA, the passage of the National Land Use Plan, but how come he cannot convince his supermajority to pass those things?
And I wanted to point out as well that there's an increasing militarization in the cabinet.
Yeah, that's true.
And,
Which he pointed out himself.
Yes, exactly. Utusan daw yung mga
Yes.
madali daw utusan
Madaling
yung mga
utusan.
Some things just stay with you, no?
And that's disturbing insofar as we need experts in these fields. If, for example, he floated the idea of appointing another military man in the Department of Agriculture to replace Secretary Piñol.
Yeah.
But agriculture is in such a dire state right now. Its contribution to economic growth is less than 1% as of the last quarter. And in the wake of the Rice Tariffication Act, many farmers have seen their incomes really plummet because of the increased competition from abroad. So we really need to appoint a technical expert, a sector expert in this crucial post. And yet, we have President Duterte's penchant to appoint all these military men. And it's not just in the agriculture department, but also in the SWD, the ILG, and others. So that's disturbing from a policy-making viewpoint.
And he probably has thrown away, or maybe he doesn't remember the recommendations of the Davide and the Feliciano commissions on not putting too many military in civilian positions.
So let's quickly zoom in. I think President Duterte is giving a quick press conference. Let's listen in.
For those who operate nightclubs, clubs, discos during night.
Okay. Sir, many were hoping for you to discuss the security of tenure bill, which we believe, it has already been transmitted to your office. It will lapse into law in, I think, this week, sir. Ano na po ang nangyari doon?
Pinag-aralan namin mismo. I have to confer with a lot of people affected. You know, this is a toto tango to eh. So it would affect the employers, and of course it would also greatly favor the workers. It's a catch-22 for me.
Are you inclined to sign it, sir? Or veto some provisions?
Maybe. It could go both. But
could go both, sir? What do you think?
I can veto it, I can sign it, or allow it to lapse into law.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Bernadette Nicolas of Business Mirror, your question, please.
Good evening, Mr. President. May
Yes,
we know why there is no mention of charter change in your SONA po?
It is not the proper time to be discussing it ngayon, daw. It's better left in conferences that are not allowed to be open to the public. Kasi pag isang provision to one another, magulo eh. Isang provision lang, if you change it, there will be a lot of complaints and a lot of pros and cons. Mamahilo ka. So better you just talk it among yourselves and present it to the public. Ano na, yung package na, completed.
But sir, are you still pushing for federalism, sir?
Yes, but I said there are things which I cannot mention now. Federalism is good, but there are certain things that you have to be very clear. One is that it devolves a lot of authority to the local governments, regional. It must be something like the president, not I suppose that it would come after me, but it has to have a strong president to put together the country. Kasi ang federal, it's a very loose structure na eh. One has a lot of power locally. So the president will have to devise until such time that we have perfected it, there has to be a strong president with the same powers now. Pero ako, I'm out of it because I think that it will pass beyond my time.
Okay, sir. Sir, on land bank, sir, just one last question, sir. What exactly do you want to be reconfigured in land bank, sir? Given that you said that they focus too much on commercial transactions and not on agricultural endeavors.
It's called land bank. Primarily, it was a bank intended to serve people who are connected with lands, whether owners or tenants. So yung land reform na yan, nandyan na, most of it. I'm going to complete the land reform, whether the landowners like it or not. Because there are still tenants who are not in possession, but the owners still, the owners of the land control the produce and everything. So I'm serving notice that I have to implement the law. The law is the law. So yung mga tenants na hindi pa nailagay in possession must be placed there as beneficiaries. Second, itong land bank, as the word says, it was really originally or maybe crafted to serve enterprises or whatever there is banking needs of the people who can barely negotiate with the bank. Ngayon, isa dito, yung mga awardees ng beneficiaries na may mga binigay na sa kanila cannot be accepted as collateral. Kasi takot nga hindi nga makabayad, tapos hindi mo naman makuha yung pera mo. But that is another thing. The fact is that they must participate in the, gaya ng, primarily it should be the duty of the DILG, na to create cooperatives again, pareho kay panahon ni Marcos. And for the land bank to go there to the mountains. Hindi naman kailangan dalhin yung pera eh. They can have loans, then they can get the fertilizers, the seedlings, the whatever. Pero they have to serve primarily the people. Kaya nga tinawag ng land bank eh. I suppose that was what was intended by the lawmakers at that time.
Thank you po.
All right, last question from Anan Meres of ABS-CBN.
Sir, good evening. Sir, you said earlier that we will stop those who fish in our EEZ in due time. Sir, may we know how can you give a timetable on due time, and when will we know that it is due time to stop those who are fishing from our EEZ?
Are you referring to the
Chinese, sir.
Well, the one is actually naghihintay ako pag when they start to dig the oil.
So,
Mahirap yan eh. So we are a claimant, they are a claimant, so we'll have to say, look, do not forget me. And I would insist that as the owner, though conflicting with your stand, we also must have a share of the resources. Second is, wag muna ngayon. That's the first. The second is when I said, during my term, last ko na lang yan, maybe on the second or the first term of my last year, God willing, if I'm still alive. Ang yan ang una, yung paunahan. So, the one that was bruited about was a sharing of 60-40. And perhaps because they are being extra generous or just parling goodwill, okay na sa akin yan. We do not have the resources. We do not have the capital to invest in digging oil. It's so expensive. It can only be done by a huge capital outlay, which we cannot afford.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
That ends the press briefing. Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, MPC.
Thank you.
You've just been watching President Duterte's live press conference. We're wrapping up our coverage. Let's start with JC Rappler. Oh, you're both Rappler JCs. I really love this.
That's just the way it is. Yeah.
JC, you're watching President Duterte. In fact, some of the things that you had brought up earlier, he responded to. Your last thoughts on what we saw?
I just want to reiterate some things that I've heard expert minds say about this issue. I remember Winnie Monsod saying, yeah, of course we can't afford to do our own oil exploration and extracting and all that. But China's not the other country in the world, not the only country in the world. Why go into a deal like this with someone, with a country with which you have a sovereignty dispute? Why not France or whoever? There must be other countries interested. When he says that he'll do it in due time, in maybe the last 2 or 1 year of his term, sure, but the thing is there is a cost to this waiting. Who said this? At the rate China is going, fishing, extracting, taking all of those resources, the giant clams, the fisheries, not to mention illegal means of fishing, dynamite fishing, cyanide fishing. There are reports here and there of that. In a year or two, what's left for our fishermen? And meanwhile, also those negotiations, we don't know what goes on inside. You're saying we're setting this aside, we're not going head on because in the silence of a private conference room, there are negotiations going on. But that happens twice a year. How many more Gemvers are there going to be? And do things have to be as bad as Gemver? I mean, every day fishermen are struggling to get a catch. And a year or two, well, for us in Manila, maybe sure, a year or two. Let's wait next SONA, 2 SONAs from now. But then it's a daily life thing for the fishermen.
But I think beyond that, the 2 biggest things, the climate change. I mean, it's coming in on 2 fronts, right? Climate and then our own policies, state policies that allow both the building, the reclamation, and then the kind of mining, I'm going to say, of the resources, right? So, fantastic, JC, JC Punangbayan, our thought leader on the economy. Your last thoughts on this?
Yes. Well, in many ways, it was not very surprising. There was nothing out of the ordinary from this SONA when it comes to an economic perspective. But we have so many initiatives that we're waiting for. For example, as mentioned earlier, the security of tenure, and then the Trabajo Bill. All of these will have large ramifications throughout the economy. And so far, President Duterte's strategy of delegating these economic matters to his managers, to his technocrats, seems to be working. But I mean, as I mentioned earlier, the president himself must have a firm grasp of the issues as well. I mean, it's not enough that you delegate these and just let them be. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a crisis of evidence-based policy making.
I think that's the most interesting one.
Because
we need to make sure to tweet that.
For whatever
crisis of evidence-based decision making.
Yes,
policy.
And so I mean, even when it comes to the smaller, not so prominent economic proposals, I mean, there's a crisis when it comes to that, and that disturbs me the most. Because moving forward, just like what happened with the drug war, I mean, that's, as I said, that's an economic policy of sorts. And the fact that we're 3 years into the drug war, it's not stopping, even if it's obvious that it's not working. And there are no studies at all. That the policymakers themselves are confused about what they want to achieve with the drug war. That kind of mentality that translates to other economic issues, that's disturbing for me. I hope that is resolved sometime soon, but I'm not so hopeful. I wouldn't bet on it.
And I think just adding to, evidence-based policy making is the fact that the weaponization of social media also eliminates discussion and debate based on evidence, right? Makes it very, very difficult for us to even hold the government accountable. Ella, you get the last word.
Probably on charter change, because I mentioned that there was a lack of discussion. Looking at his response during the press conference, it's very different from the first 3 years when he said he's very certain nothing short of federalism can solve the problem in Mindanao, and too much emphasis on Imperial Manila. Although, of course, the problem in the first 3 years was he lost momentum because he was not giving direction. And to a certain extent, he really has no feel about. Remember, during the first SONA, he made a number of mistakes by citing countries that are not really federal. So in that sense, he was so intent on saying publicly that he was for federalism, but there were so many versions because he was not giving a clear direction, because maybe he does not really know what would be the appropriate type of federalism to adopt. And now it looks like he's saying, maybe let's leave it to the next president.
He's let go of it, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
he's
could that
trying-
be the power play?
In a way, he is probably leaving federalism a bit, but maybe he's trying to discuss with his team what would be possible provisions in the Constitution that can be amended. As I mentioned earlier, it could be the liberalization of some of the economic provisions to make foreigners invest some more. And at the same time also, one important aspect with being able to consolidate more power in the office of the president, controlling the two houses of Congress in terms of numbers, and of course threatening the independence of the judiciary, he has promised quite a lot. And if he does not deliver, there will be consequences, because he cannot blame the opposition anymore.
Yes.
Because he has consolidated a lot of
Very
power.
interesting. You, there was a slight gasp, I think, when he mentioned that he may not be around, right? You at the end of the year, was that a surprise, or he does say this a lot, right? But you reacted.
I don't know. There was a seriousness to his tone when he said
Yes,
it. There was a kind of resigned. He wasn't hamming it up. It was sort of almost under the breath.
But he looks strong.
He does,
right? And he
does.
was actually very coherent, and he responded on point. It was reassuring, actually, in that part, even though there were things we looked at the tail end. Okay, as we move forward, thank you. Any other last thoughts before we close our coverage? So please, we need to say thank you
Thank
to,
you too
oh my
for the
gosh,
invitation.
Ella Atienza, JC Punong Bayan, JC Gotinga, University of the Philippines coming ngayon, and the entire Rappler team as we gasp in awe, shock. We move on to the next 3 years. I'm Maria Ressa from Rappler. See you again soon. Thank you so
too
much
for the
for
invitation, for the
your.
opportunity.
No, not at all.